League of Legends, The Lord of the Thousand Year War. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51. Hard to Melt Ore. Miss Ha held her sister Cinna's hand, looked around on the streets of Emerald Territory, and walked towards the direction of the Lord's mansion. Unlike before, the soldiers stationed on the road were a little scary, which made the two sensitive little ones feel a little uneasy. As if noticing that they had scared the two sisters, the soldiers of the Narkson Black Iron Guard put away their solemnity and replaced them with bright smiles. "Sister, why are these soldiers so scary?" Cinna glanced at the Black Iron Guard soldiers, who changed their expressions weakly and gently pulled her sister's left hand. "Maybe Brother Lester knows something. Let's run faster." Miss had also noticed the unusual atmosphere in Emerald Territory and quickly ran forward holding her sister's hand. After watching the two girls leave, the faces of the Black Iron Guard soldiers became solemn again, as if the next moment, the terrible red tide would surge from all directions to this beautiful place, destroying everything with evil breath. Sister Tally, Sister Jessie. Pushing open the unlocked door, Brother Lester and the two barbarian sisters who were waiting on the first floor were not here. "Let's go upstairs and take a look." Yes. The two girls turned around and went up to the second and third floors. Unfortunately, there was still no one. At this moment, a man in a black robe suddenly appeared on the empty stairs, scaring the sisters. After a closer look, they found that it was an acquaintance who often followed Brother Lester. Miss Cinna. Morris bowed indifferently to the two girls, and the girls also responded obediently with the ladies' etiquette of Noxus. These etiquettes were taught by Rose, and it is said that they were passed down from the nobles of the Dark Ages. "Uncle Morris, where did Brother Lester go?" Lord Lester went to the war workshop, while Miss Tally and Miss Kiss went to the military camp to study. "If the ladies are willing, I can take the ladies to see Lord Lester. Will this disturb Brother Lester?" Holding the puppet cat tightly with both hands, Hinna's little face was a little worried. Miss Ha pursed her lips and said nothing. She carefully placed her swan puppet in the most precious little wooden box, and she was reluctant to take it out to play with it. "Of course not. This is what Lord Lester told me personally." In Miss Ha's opinion, Uncle Morris's look at her and her sister was a little strange, but there should be no malice. Lord Lester said it himself. No matter what time, he will never refuse the two ladies. Facing the two little ones whose faces suddenly turned red, Morris bowed indifferently. "Ladies, please follow me." In the southern part of the Emerald Territory, outside the war workshop, a dozen Narkson Black Iron Guards were guarding the workshop in full armor, ruthlessly blocking all villagers who wanted to approach the war workshop. Inside the workshop, several of the most important people in power in the Emerald Territory gathered around the scorching furnace, making the blacksmith apprentices feel a little more uneasy. The temperature is still not enough to melt this strange ore. Looking at the furnace burning with raging fire, he poked the small exhaust port with a long iron rod and frowned. Like the crossbow arrowhead, the melting point of this strange mineral is very high, at least much higher than the melting point of steel. It seems that we must find a more suitable high temperature fuel ore furnace. Then is there any ready-made high temperature fuel that can be used? Lester asked. There is a strange tree called blackstone wood in the south of the Silent Forest. Its material is hard and heavy. It can be used to make sword handles or oil-quenched wooden shields. It can release a lot of heat when burned. I still have some in my warehouse. I can try it. If it doesn't work, I can only change the furnace and increase the efficiency of the blower. Steiner, go and get the blackstone wood for me. Steiner is a short boy with freckles on his face. Hearing the teacher's instructions, the boy who was watched by everyone nodded in panic and ran away in a hurry to the warehouse behind the workshop. As the best blacksmith apprentice in Bristol, Steiner has never been so stressed. Not to mention the former elder of the Mombia tribe and the current political official of the Emerald Territory, Lord Harold, the famous supreme commander of the Narkson Black Iron Guard, Lord Margaret, the dreaded Black Rose Mage Core Lord Meredith, and the chief of the Shadow Crossbowmen Lord Dapsel are all here. Even Lord Lester, the owner of the Emerald Territory, squeezed into this small workshop. It seems that this time, the matter is indeed unusual, just like the unusual ore. The young man thought to himself, took out a bundle of black stone wood from the warehouse, and ran to the workshop quickly. Taking the black stone wood from the apprentice with one hand, Crystal added a few pieces to the fire. It was visible to the naked eye that the red and yellow flames of the fire quickly turned into white and blue, and a stream of hot air spread out to the surroundings, making the sweaty people want to take off their clothes and jump into the river to take a cold shower. Everyone waited in silence for half an hour, and even Crystal felt the heavy pressure. It seems that if this strange ore is not melted today, others will never give up. Thinking of this, Crystal threw a few more pieces of black stone wood into the furnace and poked the exhaust vent with a thin iron rod, and his face became more happy. It's melted. The ore is starting to melt. The others also breathed a sigh of relief. Crystal said to Lester, "My lord, why don't you go back and wait? It will take a long time for this pile of ore to melt completely." Lester frowned and asked, "How long will it take?" "It should take a few hours." "Wait." Knowing that Lester had made up his mind, the old blacksmith stopped persuading him. 3 hours later, liquid ore that had been melted into liquid flowed out of the furnace outlet and was collected by the old blacksmith into the clay mold. Everyone was alert and stared at the clay mold. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, the old blacksmith skillfully smashed the clay mold, and an irregular dark red pure rectangular ingot appeared in front of everyone. The missing part was obviously because the melted liquid or water did not fill it completely, resulting in the clay mold not being filled. So much ore, but only such a small ingot was melted? Faced with Margaret's questioning, the old blacksmith was also a little helpless. Just looking at this ingot, it doesn't seem to contain any impurities. Normally, this kind of ore can only appear in the form of very pure ore, but the pile of ore before seemed to have a lot of it, so it seems that there are a lot of impurities. I don't quite understand the principle. To be honest, I have been forging iron all my life, and I have never seen such a strange thing. It can be said that this thing does not look like a natural product. Chapter 52 Strange Metal Ingot. After successfully obtaining the ingots, under Lester's order, Crystal and Meredith quickly began to test the characteristics of the ingots. At this time, the two little ones following Morris also arrived at the periphery of the war workshop. The Narcan black iron guard soldier holding a long sword looked at the strange black-robed man with some doubts. He was about to draw his sword to question him, but was stopped by the old soldier next to him. The old soldier whispered, "That's Lord Morris. Before you came, Lord Morris was the leader of the Shadow Crossbowmen. After that, Lord Morris carried out a special mission under the order of the Lord. You must not offend him. He is at the same level as Lord Margaret. I heard from Lord Margaret that Lord Morris seems to be related to a new elite army that Lord Lester is going to establish." Nodding with lingering fear, the soldier who had just joined the Black Iron Guard shook his fist and saluted Morris. "Lord Morris, Miss Howe and Miss Zinner, please come in. The Lord is inside." Morris nodded indifferently to the old soldier and walked into the war workshop with two nervous little girls. "Sister Miss Howe, I'm a little scared. Sister Zinner, Brother Lester is inside, and I'm here too. Don't be afraid." Feeling the completely different atmosphere from before, the blonde girl in a white dress comforted her sister, but she was also in a state of anxiety. Obviously, life is getting better and better. Why did the smiles on everyone's faces disappear? As if something big is going to happen. Deep doubts flashed through the little girl's heart. Passing through the guard posts, the three of them walked into the main smelting room of the war workshop. At this time, Crystal had just put down the ingot in his hand, and Meredith took over. After a quick glance in the crowd, Zinner instantly found Lester, who was surrounded by the crowd, and standing at the front. Her little face suddenly lit up, and she called out crisply, "Brother Lester." Hearing Hinner's call, Lester's serious expression changed instantly and turned into an indissoluble gentleness and pampering after turning around, opening his arms to Hinner and Miss Howe. Seeing Lester's attitude towards the two little girls, even Margaret couldn't help but secretly feel jealous. After everyone made way, the two little girls skillfully threw themselves into Lester's arms and acted like a spoiled child. Miss Howe and Hinner were picked up by Lester one by one, which also allowed the two little girls to see the dark red ingots that were being tested by magic in the hands of the female wizard. Having never seen such a strange thing, Miss had asked instinctively with some fear. "Brother Lester, what is that? Why does it feel so evil?" "Evil?" Stunned by Miss Ha's overly subjective words, Lester did not comment and looked at the little Hina who was curled up in his arms on the right. "Zina, do you also think this thing is evil?" Pulling the head out of Lester's chest, Zina glanced at the ingot in Meredith's hand and nodded weakly. After a moment's hesitation, Lester spoke with a smile. "This is an ingot made from ore dug from the ground. We don't know the characteristics of this ingot yet, but we will soon understand it. You two should watch it carefully, okay?" "Okay." Asterisk 2. The tense and solemn atmosphere was broken by the two little guys, and the blacksmith apprentices and the rulers present were relieved a lot. Lester kept a note of evil, and did not dwell on it. Seeing that Meredith was still conducting a magic test, he turned to Harold and said, "This matter must be kept to ourselves. Whether it is the red-skinned rats in the shimmering silver mountains or this strange ingot, the news must be completely blocked. Elder Harold, I don't need to say more about what to do, right?" Knowing that the man in front of him was knocking on him, Harold nodded respectfully and said sincerely, "Lord Lester, I know what to do. Please rest assured. I'm nothing if I leave the Emerald Territory. Moreover, you trust me and appoint me as the political officer of the Emerald Territory. I, Harold, am not an ungrateful person." Lester nodded, but Harold continued. "So, Lord Lester, since the mines in the Silver Mountains have been closed, should we go to the Eurus Mountains to mine?" "You are right. The mining work cannot be stopped. We need a lot of ore to make equipment. You arrange the mining in the Eurus Mountains in person and report to me after the progress." "Understood." When the two finished talking, Meredith also dispersed the lead detection magic, put the cold ore ingot on the anvil, and looked at Crystal. "You go first, Lord Meredith." Crystal said modestly. Meredith nodded and looked at Lester. "There is no doubt that this ingot has the properties of metal and has a great affinity for magic. It can temporarily charge and release mana and can be used to make certain magic amplification equipment or magic weapons. It is a very rare magic metal material." Hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up. The only strange thing is that these affinities are reflected in the ability to resonate with magic of various attributes, which is also one of the two elements of the magic breaking attribute. Arrows containing this ingot element can easily penetrate the magic shield, which is completely different from Damasia's magic forbidden stone. The white stone completely blocks the flow of magic, or destroys the construction of the magic array, thereby achieving the effect of breaking magic, while this metal ingot is more like melting magic than breaking magic. Lester asked after absorbing Meredith's analysis. "In other words, if this equipment is used to make swords and armor, magic shields and magic attacks can be ignored?" Meredith said seriously. "To be precise, this can be achieved within the magic absorption limit of the metal ingot. When the magic absorption limit is exceeded, and a maximum critical value is reached, the metal sword will forcibly release the absorbed magic element in a directional manner, and the metal armor will forcibly release the magic element that attack. With a little guidance, the magic attack can be rebounded in the direction of the attack. If the magic absorption limit of the metal is forcibly increased by magic, it is likely to cause the metal to explode." Margaret interrupted. "Does guidance require the user to have a basic knowledge of magic? Does this mean that only mages can use equipment made of this metal?" Shaking his head, Meredith looked at Margaret with a solemn expression, without any surprise. "Ordinary people can also guide the direction of the release of magic element. In fact, this is what surprised me the most. To put it in a very irresponsible way, this metal ingot seems to have some kind of independent consciousness. I'm not sure if this is my illusion, because when I was casting the test magic, I vaguely heard the call of it." Chapter 53 Bloody Devil Steel. Lester put down the two girls and picked up the dark red metal ingot from the anvil. He frowned. After the metal ingot was formed, he felt an instinctive desire, a desire to be obtained. He thought it was his illusion, until he heard Meredith mention the existence of it. "What on earth are you?" Holding the heavy metal ingot, Lester closed his eyes and tried to feel it in his own way. Everyone looked at Lester's solemn expression and did not dare to disturb him. The sound of the burning stove gradually faded away, and Lester's eyes were dark. It seemed that nothing happened, and it was no different from closing his eyes at ordinary times. "Is it an illusion? Try the meditation state." calming down, his tongue against the upper palate, and his consciousness focusing on the position of the pineal gland, Lester successfully entered the meditation state of the practice posture. In the meditation state, even the darkness disappeared without a trace, and Lester returned to his lake of the soul. The so-called lake of the soul, to put it simply, is actually an imaginary picture. The calm and clear lake has no ripples under the deep purple starry sky. Lake of the soul is the spiritual world that Lester has built little by little for his meditation state over the past 10 years, from the darkness of nothingness, to a well, to a lake, and finally to the stars, finally creating a deep purple starry sky. In this spiritual world, Lester can completely relax his mind and body, and also increase the senses. In Lester's view, the spiritual world in meditation also has the inner vision effect in Eastern culture. Just like the calm lake and the twinkling starry sky, it not only represents Lester's stable emotions and spirit, but also indicates that the body is very healthy. Looking at the lake without a trace of ripples, I don't know if it's an illusion, but Lester seems to find that the originally clear lake water has become a lot greener. Where does this green come from? Lester frowned. It would have been better if he didn't look at it. After taking a look, he felt that the lake was getting greener and greener. Then, after discovering this, a flash of red light flashed across the vast purple starry sky. The red light fell from the sky like a meteorite with a flash of light, and hit the lake of the mind directly, stirring up huge waves. Sure enough, something is wrong. His face changed, and Lester quickly retreated. His meditation was interrupted by an abrupt and terrifying vision. Lester left the lake of the mind, and returned to darkness. His consciousness regained control of his body. His palms began to heat up, as if he was holding a ball of solidified blood, which was indescribably soft. Harvest. Destruction. Come. A strong scarlet murderous intent burst out from the depths of his heart without any warning. Lester suddenly opened his eyes. The familiar fire was still burning, and the metal ingot in the palm of his right hand did not turn into blood. It was an illusion, but it was not an illusion. What this meant was unknown. Everyone's expression was a little solemn, and Meredith opened her mouth, but didn't know how to describe it, and quickly closed it. Zinna pulled Lester's left hand and spoke weakly. "Brother Lester, your expression just now was so scary." Miss Ha was a little worried. Putting down the metal ingot, Lester patted his face, picked up the two little guys again, and said softly, "Sorry, didn't I scare you? We are fine." Miss Ha shook her head, and pointed to the metal ingot on the anvil. The iron just turned so red, so scary. "It's okay, I'm here, don't be afraid." After comforting Miss Ha, Lester turned to look at Crystal. "Uncle Blacksmith, please explain the metal properties of this metal ingot." "Okay, Lord." After taking a deep look at Lester, Crystal retracted his gaze, suppressed his excitement, took a deep breath, and began to describe what he had just gained. This metal ingot has a much higher hardness than steel, but its ductility is not very good. It may need to use other materials to improve its ductility and fuse it with other metals for forging. The specific situation of combining it with other metal materials needs further testing. The melting point of the metal ingot is extremely high, and black stone wood is needed to heat and smelt the ore. There are many impurities in the ore, and it seems that there are some associated mineral element that I have never seen before. Under the same size, volume, the weight of the metal ingot is much higher than that of steel. I still need to measure the specific amount. If you only use metal ingots to forge equipment, you can consider forging and using short swords and short knives, which are less difficult to forge and use. Long swords are difficult to forge, and the weight of the weapon is not something that ordinary people can bear. However, considering the hardness of the metal ingot, it can be made into a rapier, as long as the ductility of the sword spine can be increased. Single armor is difficult to use on the battlefield due to weight issues, so alloy armor can be considered. In short, this kind of metal ingot is a very rare weapon material. Once used on the battlefield, it can easily defeat enemies equipped with refined steel. It can be used to build an invincible army. After everyone had digested the information, Lester looked at Meredith and Crystal. "Do you have anything else to add? I need the actual equipment to conduct magic tests, to know the specific performance of the equipment." "I have nothing to add." Meredith shook his head, while Crystal was a little excited. Sir, this metal ingot has never appeared in the world before. Since it was discovered by our Emerald Territory, it is a gift from the gods to our Emerald Territory. In order to keep it confidential and facilitate communication, please give this mineral material 2 new names. Looking at the dark red metal ingot quietly placed on the anvil, recalling the voice of my own heart that I heard when I left the Lake of the Soul, I made a decision in my heart. This metal ingot is black with a hint of red, similar to red copper. It was brought out by a rat from the bottom of the mountain. So why not call it mountain copper? As for the outside world, we can declare that this is a special steel smelted with special magical materials. Steel made with magic can be called magic steel. Mountain copper and magic steel are great names. Hiristal was excited that the 2 names given by Lester perfectly matched his own views on metal ingots. After naming them, Lester looked at the blacksmith apprentices present with a cold look. This is a serious matter. In order to prevent the news from leaking out, the war workshop will be put under martial law, and the Narksum Black Iron Guard will take over the defense work. All blacksmith apprentices will be strictly monitored and protected by the Narksum Black Iron Guard. From today on, you will live in the war workshop for a long time. You are not allowed to enter and leave at will. If you want to leave, you must obtain Margaret's consent. Otherwise you will be treated as a defector and those who violate the order can be killed on the spot. Chapter 54 There can only be one bride. Steiner's face turned pale, and he finally realized the seriousness of the matter. This was not a simple question of whether to leak or not. Obviously, the leader wanted to completely eliminate any possibility of leaking intelligence. Of course, your treatment will also be preferential. Since your personal freedom has been restricted, I will naturally compensate you in other ways. The blacksmith apprentice's face looked a little better. Glancing at the soldiers present, Lester said nothing. The soldiers present were all loyal soldiers who had followed him through life and death. Lester naturally did not need to warn his soldiers. Even if he wanted to monitor them, he would find other people to do it secretly, otherwise it would chill the soldiers' hearts. Just like what the organization did, at least the surface work had to be done well, to prevent others from deceiving themselves. The most urgent task is to quickly smelt the remaining mountain copper into ingots, and then find the most suitable forging method. I need a large amount of magic steel equipment to fight against the rats underground. Priority will be given to creating magic steel plate armor that can resist magic steel crossbows. I will give you the design drawings of the specific design style. The rat problem must be solved as soon as possible. My lord, even if all the weapons and equipment of the red-skinned rats are melted, there will not be too many mountain copper ingots that can be obtained. If mountain copper cannot be melted and forged with steel, I'm afraid that not much magic steel equipment can be obtained. Even if all the mountain copper ingots are melted and forged into plate armor, no one can afford it. Moreover, the workshop does not have much blackstone wood reserves. I need a large amount of blackstone wood. Looking at the old blacksmith in front of him, Lester's will was harder than steel and colder than an iceberg. Everything will be solved, just do what I say. Yes. After leaving the war workshop, Margaret began to set up sentries and patrol points at key locations, while Meredith, under Lester's order, sent the Black Rose Wizard to pass on the message to Rose. Suddenly, under a hidden and shady tree, only 2 confused little guys were left beside Lester. Brother Lester, is something big going to happen? Holding the puppet cat Zioha in one hand, and pulling the corner of Lester's clothes with the other hand, Zina whispered. Don't you understand yet? A very scary enemy appeared in the Emerald Territory. Is it called the Red Rat? I heard it clearly. Miss Hap put her hands on her waist, with a proud look on her face. SHHHHH. Sister, you are too loud. Brother Lester said that the news of magic steel cannot be leaked. By the way, there is also mountain copper, and you can't tell others. Zina hurriedly stopped her sister from leaking military information, but she didn't know that she leaked more than her sister. Looking down at the 2 little ones who were plotting loudly, Lester smiled bitterly and held the 2 little ones' hands. Miss Hina, you are 6 years old this year, right? Yes, I'm 6 years old this year. Hina was a little proud as she walked along the cobblestone road, gently shaking Lester's hand, and she straightened her small chest which was beginning to develop. Hina has grown a lot taller this year, and my father also said that brother Lester is a very good man and asked me to get along well with my big brother. Naturally, knowing what Kiram meant, Lester smiled. Even though they were not yet awakened divine bodies, Miss Ha and Hina's daily food intake was definitely not small, and their appetites were increasing. If he were not the Lord, he would probably not be able to support these two little guys, so he had solved a big problem for Kiram. If he was more realistic, Kiram should be considered his father-in-law, and perhaps he should be better to his father-in-law, since he acquiesced to his relationship with his two daughters anyway. It is best to cultivate feelings from childhood. You have to win at the starting line. Tie the angel's wings to the emerald collar and tie them to yourself. Anyway, I will not live to see the day when Narxis becomes an empire, let alone the era of heroes more than 900 years later. It is enough to survive smoothly in these 100 years and leave something behind. I'm an adult, and there is nothing to be embarrassed about in order to succeed. Thinking of this, Lester suddenly squatted down and looked at Miss Ha and Hina seriously. When Miss Ha and Hina grow up, are you willing to be Lester's brother's bride? The blonde and the black-haired girl looked at each other and were stunned at the same time. The two little faces began to steam like steamed crayfish, and their big eyes began to turn in circles. Although it was just a glance, the two sisters understood each other's answer, and the fact that their sisters knew their ambitions, coupled with the unexpected question from Lester's brother, made the two little guys' heads confused and crashed directly. If you want to be the new bride, Hina can. With her two little hands clutching the puppet cat, Hina murmured uneasily with her head down, feeling ashamed and embarrassed, but also feeling happy to be liked by the person she likes, as if it was sweeter than eating honey. Who wants to be your bride with my sister? Even if you are the Lord, you can't do this, right? At most, I can be your subordinate and help you manage a few people. Staring at the little blonde girl who arrogantly rejected him, Lester's disappointment was evident, and he looked hurt. Miss Ha, I'm sorry, I thought you liked me. Lester let go of Miss Ha's little hand, took a half step back, apologized to the blonde girl with an apologetic look, but made the little girl feel a sense of alienation she had never felt before. When she thought that Lester would treat her like this in the future, no longer as close as before, Miss Ha felt very uncomfortable and wanted to cry. Seeing that her sister was still standing with Lester, as if they were alienating her together, Miss Ha felt unspeakably wronged, as if she was betrayed by both of them at the same time. With her pale face tightly held, Miss Ha bit her lips and looked at the two of them stubbornly without saying a word, but tears soon filled her eyes. Don't cry, brother Lester apologizes to you. Holding the trembling Miss Ha in his arms, Lester wiped away the tears from the little girl's eyes. Even if Miss Ha doesn't like me, it doesn't change the fact that I like Miss Ha. There will always be a place for Miss Ha here. Miss Ha can come to play with me anytime, okay? Miss Ha wrinkled her aggrieved nose and snorted softly, but she hugged Lester with a sly smile, which made Hina's relaxed smile stagnate. Even Lester felt that he was fooled. Between me and my sister, you can only choose one bride. Lester, who do you choose? Lester's face froze, and then sweat appeared on his forehead in an instant, dripping to the ground. He only felt that the big tree next to him was shaking, and the fallen leaves fell from the sky. In his peripheral vision, he seemed to catch a glimpse of a koala in a black robe, hugging the tree trunk and shaking. The silent man seemed to have noticed that his tracks had been discovered and quickly turned his head back to the tree to reflect on himself, but his trembling body couldn't stop, so he simply continued to hold back his laughter. Lester suddenly realized that the boss of Nightblade, the paralyzed Morris, was very idle recently. It seems that the war workshop is short of blackstone wood. Thanks to Blood Moon 1, Little Yellow at 4.5. Book friend 20210406191000679. Charming willow eyes, lying down to watch the clouds. Pork chop sauce, deep moon and clear blue. I give up. Okay, wind, flowers, snow, and moon. Night is not dark for their monthly tickets, and several book friends for their awards. Thank you for your recommendation votes and support. The ranking of votes has dropped a lot recently, but there are still many people who follow the reading and support as always. Hanga is very grateful. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55, The Boy and Girl on the Cliff. The Conqueror's Sea is turbulent. The Milky Way, flowing from west to east across the Dalmatia Plain, has 3 large branches, irrigating and nurturing millions of square kilometers of fertile land, providing sufficient water sources for the Dalmatians' farmland, allowing rice and wheat near the warm south to truly achieve 3 harvests a year, and various crops near the northwest mountains to thrive. The fertile and vast land is the greatest pride of the Dalmatians. In addition to the forbidden magic stone forest and the powerful army, the Green Fang Peak and the Eternal Peak stand side by side between the Urus Mountains in the north and the Silver Mountains in the south. The 2 peaks form a natural barrier around the eastern border of Dalmatia. The steepest part is soaring into the clouds, with cliffs thousands of meters high. At the most steep and tight place between the 2 peaks, the turbulent water of the Milky Way suddenly intensifies in the narrow closed gap. The waterway is too narrow and cramped, and unskilled boatmen and small but strong longboats cannot pass through. Otherwise, the turbulent river will make the boatmen understand what it means to have reefs, and destroy the boats and die. In many things, if you go fast, something will go wrong, whether it's crossing a river, or communicating with your wife at night. You can't go fast, you must not go fast. East has always believed in this, and tried to do it, and today is no exception. The man carefully held the oars and slid down the Silver River steadily with a boat full of white bricks, cement, lime and other building materials. At the sharp bends, the man would reduce the speed of the boat as much as possible, so that his bow would touch the hard reefs as few times as possible. Watching the towering peaks on both sides fall behind him, East breathed a sigh of relief and successfully parked the boat on the simple dock. At the dock, 4 or 5 Dalmatia soldiers sitting on the carriage board had been waiting for a long time. After tying the boat rope, East jumped off the wooden boat flexibly, crossed his fists in front of his chest, and saluted the oncoming soldier captain. The captain returned the salute. "Sir, this is all the cargo for today, all on the boat. Easter, thank you for your hard work. Brothers, come and move the things. Not hard, not hard." At the captain's call, several Dalmatia soldiers stopped talking, jumped onto the wooden boat, and began to transfer the goods to the carriage. Easter narrowed his eyes and looked at the base of the sentry tower that had just been built not far away. After hesitating for a moment, he still spoke. "Sir, building a sentry tower here means we are going to fight?" "Maybe." The captain was also a little worried. He glanced at the honest boatman and felt that the man in front of him was not a big mouth who liked to talk nonsense everywhere, so he said casually, "The Mombians in the east were defeated by the Naxans. Now the Nokmachi Plains has become the territory of those barbarians in Naxos. We can't help but be on guard, otherwise we wouldn't have given priority to building a sentry here." Hearing the captain say this, thinking that the village where he lived was not far to the west of Green Fang Peak, Easter's face showed some fear. Those Naxan barbarians love to behead and kill people, just like the frail-jawed wild men in the north, who eat raw meat and drink blood. "Then, sir, will the Naxans attack us?" Seeing that only half of the goods had been moved, the captain wanted to talk more. "We are all family members. I will tell you something. Don't talk nonsense, otherwise there will be a big mess." "Of course, sir, I'm Esther, so don't worry." The fear dissipated, and Esther rubbed her hands like a fly on a cake, feeling excited about getting to know a high-level military secret. Over there, the Naxans have established a gathering place called Emerald Territory, which has a well-organized army. Although it is not as good as our Dalmatia warriors, it is also very powerful. After a pause, the captain lowered his voice a little, and his face was a little serious. "The barbarian leader of Emerald Territory is a guy named Lester. This guy defeated the 2 barbarian tribes entrenched in Damo Plains, and it is said that he also scared the headless bandits." East's face turned pale and his voice trembled. "He is the one-armed bandit leader who has been wreaking havoc in Damo Plains for several years, and likes to stick human heads on stakes." The captain nodded calmly and said calmly, "That's him. This guy was scared by Lester and claimed that he didn't want to provoke Lester and would not attack Narx's territory again. I think you should understand how difficult this guy named Lester is. It is rumored that Lester cut off the heads of more than 100 bandits and placed them at the foot of the mountain with a ferocious look on his face. He drank the blood of the bandits and ate their flesh raw and directly scared the second in command of the bandits to death. The goods have been loaded on the back of the carriage. The captain patted the shoulder of East, who was almost scared silly, and gave the man a reassurance. Don't worry, as long as we are here, we will not let the Narxans enter the Green Fang Peak. Moreover, Lord Jarvan has already started recruiting new soldiers. It is said that a new legion will be established soon. Don't worry, you will be allowed to evacuate when it is time. This is Demacia, not a place where Narxans can act recklessly. No matter who it is not allowed. After returning to the boat in a daze and watching the carriage heading towards the watchtower, East finally understood the significance of his simple job. No. I have to ask if there are any new building materials that can be transported. The watchtower here must be built as soon as possible. The man no longer hesitated. The wooden boat turned around and slowly drove towards the Green Fang Peak. On the western foothills of the Urus Mountains, not far from the Mithril village, a young man wielding a wooden sword split the air again and again, but his eyes were a little dazed. Brother Kraken. A familiar voice came from behind. The dazzling and elegant silver light disappeared without a trace. Kraken suppressed his disappointment and carefully placed the wooden sword on the rocky ground. He wiped the sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. Looking at the pretty girl running towards him, Kraken's face became more gentle. The panting girl handed the leather bag containing dried meat and wheat bread to the sturdy boy and then took the leather water bottle from her waist. She looked at the boy with curved eyebrows as he devoured the food he brought. After a moment, she realized that something was wrong. Brother, eat slowly. My mother once said that eating and drinking right after exercise is not good for the body. Neriah, I'm fine. Putting down the half-filled leather water bottle, Kraken stared at the girl in front of him, feeling that he could not see enough. I really like her, and I really want to be with her, and spend every minute and every second, but it's a pity that all I can do is look at her stupidly, and can't say anything. Being stared at by the boy with burning eyes, the girl's face also had a little shy blush. Just thinking about the occasional abnormal movement in her body, the girl felt a little lost. When she thought that she might affect the boy's journey and future, the girl subconsciously took a half step back. The majestic face disappeared. Seeing the girl's alienation, Kraken was stunned and felt a little lost. It was difficult to say the words that were stuck in his throat. His father's order echoed in his ears again, but the beautiful love became unpredictable again. This is the price that he should pay as the heir of the ruler of Mithril village. That, Neriah. HMM. The atmosphere suddenly became a little silent. Kraken tried to move his lost eyes away from Neriah, and the boy looked at the boundless sky. Perhaps he should be like the beautiful dragon bat with silver wings, flying away from here without hesitation, looking for his own world. Finally, the boy looked at the girl again. His eyes were clear and bright, and his voice was firm. Lord Jarvan has a new conscription order. It is said that he wants to form a corps of steel swordsmen and equip them with weapons and armor made of Demacia steel. Brother Kraken, are you leaving? Looking at the girl's troubled face, the boy couldn't tell what kind of feelings the girl had for him for a moment, but at this moment, the result would not change. The boy turned around and stopped looking at the girl. He looked at the endless horizon, and the silver figure flew away. It was time for him to leave. Yes, Neriah, I'm going to join the army. A ray of light cut through the darkness and shone into the room. Emerald Territory, Lord's Mansion. Climbing up from the warm and tender body, Lester covered Rose with a quilt, put on a few simple clothes, and began to practice the training posture. After doing it several times, Jis and Tally in the next room also walked out of the room and began to wash. After a rather depressing breakfast, under the pressure of Rose's momentum, Jis and Tally, who were cleaning up the dishes, hurried away. Rose sat directly in Lester's arms, hugged the man's neck, bit the man's earlobe, and stretched out her cat-like tongue to lick it playfully, which made Lester feel a little itchy. Those two barbarian girls are really good. You have a beautiful life. You play with 2 big ones and raise 2 small ones. Why didn't I see that you were so lustful at the beginning?" Lester hugged the woman in his arms with a bitter smile. He himself was a little unsure whether Rose was LeBlanc. How could she act like this and really feel jealous? I just want to be one of the denominators of the Enchantress, so why would I think so much? I thought so, but I couldn't say it. After confirming that Rose's magic did not have the ability to read minds, Lester did not hypnotize himself like he did at the beginning. So the man sighed, and his eyes became more sad. "Rose, I just wanted to try. In the end, I still can't have children. I'm sorry for you." Rose, who had prepared a set of punches, was stunned. She forgot all the complaints and criticisms she had prepared in her mind for several nights. The woman was dumbfounded in the man's arms. "Oh my god, men can also have children? I don't know how it got on the new book list." I told her how to collect it and Mary jumped. To celebrate the collection exceeding 2k, this chapter has 3k words. Thank you for your support. I ask for votes and investment as usual. Chapter 56. Lemon is really delicious. Not knowing the turbulent waves and brainstorms in Rose's mind, the sad Lester continued. "Rose, we were supposed to have a child, but after more than 2 years, your stomach didn't move at all after so many times. I wondered if it was my problem, so I looked for other people. But another year passed, and Jess and Tally didn't respond. They are healthy girls like you. Now it seems that the problem is indeed with me." As if he had lost his sense of security, the man's body trembled involuntarily, and his face was full of self-blame and shame for his incompetence. Seeing the mountain on the man's back, Rose rarely felt a little more compassion, and tightened her body against the man, comforting him in her own way. Sure enough, when she moved, the bed pad started to itch again, like a stick, and not at all quiet. Is it because he can give birth to children too much that he can't? Or is it really that? "So, you've always cared about this. It's my fault. I neglected your thoughts." "No, it's not your fault, Rose." Gently letting go of the woman in his arms, the man's face was full of reluctance, but he couldn't help showing his true feelings. "Although my heart is broken, and I'm in pain, but I can't delay your future, Rose. Maybe you should consider other men. I don't care, as long as you can be happy." Staring at Rose's complicated eyes for a long time, Lester sighed. "I just want you to live happily, and it's enough to see you from a distance. Apart from that, I don't ask for anything else." "Don't say it, Lester. You know I'm not that kind of person, and I can't leave you. How can I live without you?" Putting herself in Lester's shoes, Rose covered her chest with a painful face, and almost vomited out of disgust. It's okay if she's acting, but is this man from the mountain valley also acting? When they looked at each other, they were both stunned for a moment, and found that their acting was a bit too exaggerated. They immediately restrained themselves, and returned to a calm and gentle state in tacit understanding. "I want to learn magic, Rose. Maybe magic can help me solve this problem." Rose thought for a while, and nodded after recognizing the man's method of changing the subject. "The Emerald Territory has been busy recently, and you can't go to the Immortal Fortress. I will let Meredith teach you some basic concepts of magic first. After you are done with this busy period and stabilize, you can come to the Immortal Fortress to find me. If it's appropriate, you can let Meredith take you to the Black Rose Academy. You should have a good talent for magic, and maybe you can become my student." Thinking of being able to teach and reprimand a man with a serious face, Rose curved her eyebrows and looked very happy. "It sounds great. I'm looking forward to it." And Lester thought of the scene where the Black Silk teacher, Teacher Rose, was teaching on the podium, and he squatted under the podium table and looked up and listened carefully. Maybe there will be a wonderful private tutoring after class. "What are you thinking about when you smile so lasciviously?" Rose rolled her eyes and pinched the man's soft flesh hard to stop him from thinking about it. "Do you really not need my help to deal with the red-skinned rats? I always feel that the appearance of such things in the glittering Silver Mountains is very abnormal. It doesn't seem to be a naturally occurring species. It seems that ordinary rats have been affected by some powerful magical energy, just like the mountain copper ingots, which have produced some evil consciousness that affects people's hearts, and made the rats have the ability to think." Rose, who was speaking, had naturally dissected the corpse of the red-skinned rat, and had a certain understanding of this evil underground species. Naturally, she had also come into contact with the strange mountain copper ingots. "You don't need to do anything now, Rose, I can handle it." Instead of wasting time discussing these issues, picking Rose up, Lester walked upstairs. "Want to do some after-meal exercise, my teacher? What do you think, my lustful student?" Outside the silent forest, the Demacia scout rider jumped on his horse with a look of horror on his face and galloped towards the direction of the Green Fang Peak without looking back. No need to chase him. Morris glanced at the Demacia rider who was running away quickly and waved his hand. 4 carriages loaded with craftsmen and tools slowly stopped. More than 100 Narcs and Black Iron Guard soldiers and 50 shadow crossbowmen behind the carriages spread out in all directions, on alert. A dozen Nightblade assassins armed with machetes, spears and hunting crossbows who were exploring the way ahead disappeared into the dense forest, clearing the marching route for the pioneers. More than 20 soldiers were deployed to cut wood and help the construction craftsmen quickly build wooden houses and camps. Morris looked at Apsa. "This is left to you." Apsa, with an Arxan military salute to Morris, looked a little more mature with his beard. "Don't worry, Lord Morris. As long as Demacia doesn't want to go to war with us, this will be the safest camp." Nodding, Morris took all the remaining 18 Arxan Black Iron Guard soldiers and plunged into the dense forest. "Hurry up. The camp must be built before dark." At some point, the clear sky had darkened and dark clouds began to gather. Looking up at the sky, Apsa arranged the sentries around and ordered the rest of the shadow crossbowmen to join in the construction of the camp. "If you don't want to get wet in the rain, move faster." Cutting off vines and thorns, chopping off messy branches, the silent hunters were efficient, hunting down all the venomous snakes and beasts they saw along the way. Lester's elite killer unit, the Nightblade, finally showed its sharp fangs in actual combat. The Narcs and Black Iron Guard, who had originally disdained the new troops they had never met, felt a chill on his back after seeing the corpses of beasts along the way and realized the gap between himself and the other side. The further into the dense forest, the more difficult the road conditions became. Swamps, mud, and even a piece of rotten wood that looked like it had been rotten for hundreds of years became obstacles that hindered the team's progress. In addition, the sky was getting darker and darker, and groups of finger-sized mosquitoes were whizzing around. Everything in front of them made the Narcs and soldiers who grew up in plains or mountainous areas understand why the dense forest was called a human-restricted area by many people. Fortunately, before setting off, each soldier received a large bag of insect repellent powder. At this time, they didn't care about the strange smell of the insect repellent powder. They wet the insect repellent powder with dew and applied it to the exposed parts of their bodies. For this army deep in the dense forest, Black Rockwood was the only target. PS1, it will be recommended tomorrow. The editor is a really good person. PS2, thank you for the monthly ticket support from Guayo Guayo Deu Sword, Garbage is Not Waste, Yin Yin, Nakingchi, Little Yellow at 4.5, Zissy Lee, Blood Moon 1, Book Friends. 2021406191000679, Book Friends 2017082494832567 right square bracket. And thank you for your recommendation votes. The popularity will also rise if the double votes are high. I think this is an important reason for being able to be on the new book list. If it continues to maintain and does not fall, it should be possible to collect 5,000 before it is put on the shelves. I hope everyone can continue to support me after it is put on the shelves, plus everyone's rewards and more updates. I will try to use 10,000 consecutive daily updates for a week to impact the combat power list and let everyone read it more happily. Hangai bows to everyone's enthusiasm here. Chapter 57 The Honest Yodel. The Narxan army has appeared outside the tranquil forest. When the Demacia cavalry scouts arrived at the outpost, several soldiers had already lined up to wait, but they could not hide the panic on their faces. Rather than lined up to meet the enemy, they were preparing to line up to escape. Although no one looked down on the Narxan barbarians in normal conversations, after seeing the well-trained army, the soldiers still sensed a different aura. They followed orders and did not follow rules. That did not seem like something that barbarians who only knew how to chop heads would do, but more like the elite warriors of the Demacia Legion. Don't be afraid, I've seen it. What we need to do now is to be alert, not panic, otherwise we will only become dead souls under the sword. Coming down from the Green Fang Peak, the Demacia sentry leader, who was wearing simple leather armor, looked stern and encouraged the soldiers. I have sent someone to find General Oren to report the news. Don't panic. The Narxans' destination should be the Silent Forest. Otherwise, they will definitely not let Sventa return. Captain Winster is right. The Narxans did not chase me. Their goal is the Silent Forest. Sventa got off the horse and confirmed Winster's words, which made the remaining 4 sentinels feel relieved. Didn't they show any hostility? No, I just ran away because I saw that army. Winster pondered for a moment, touched the short beard on his chin, and spoke slowly. Although the Narxans occupied the Nokmachi Plain, they have not shown any hostility to us, and we cannot start a war easily. This matter is waiting for General Oren to deal with it. We can't make the decision. Sventa, you should continue to be on guard at the periphery. If there is any movement by the Narxans, you must come back and report it in time. Understood. Watching Sventa leave, Sentinel Captain Winster sighed. It's better not to fight. Demacia Settlement, a simple training ground built with white stone. With a serious expression, Oren wielded the broad wooden sword he used for training, and easily blocked the attack of his subordinates. Then he kicked down his capable subordinate and couldn't help but feel a little angry. Trevican, where did your strength go? Is this the fighting attitude you used to deal with those bandits and frail-jawed barbarians? Getting up from the ground, Trevican picked up his broad wooden sword and saluted Oren respectfully. General Oren, I have tried my best. I'm sure I'm no match for you. After glaring at Trevican, Oren looked at the other soldiers in the training ground, feeling a little disappointed. I've told you guys a long time ago, don't treat me like a general on the training ground. I'm just an ordinary soldier of Demacia like you. When it comes to fighting, you have to go all out. Yes, General, we've always understood this. General Oren, your strength is indeed very strong. It's not that we didn't go all out. General Oren, you just fought with Trevican. Are you not injured? Everything has 2 sides. A strong reputation and being respected are good things, but not absolutely good things. Looking at the soldiers in front of him who always treat him like a baby, even Oren couldn't get angry and couldn't help but sigh. Oren, I'll fight you. Poppy, who had been eager to try, took a big wooden stick that was 3 times taller than him from the weapon rack, came to Oren with a serious face, and played a stick flower on his head. With his eyes brightened, Oren smiled at his yodel friend and got ready for battle. Poppy, come on. As soon as the words fell, the smiles of the two disappeared instantly, and the atmosphere of killing instantly enveloped the training ground. The two rushed towards each other at the same time and fought together. The crackling sound of collision continued to ring out. Poppy's stick skills improved a lot in constant practice. In particular, relying on his short height advantage, the long stick swept across, focusing on the 3 roots of the tall Oren, forcing Oren to block the fatal attacks on his lower body from time to time. The man knew that the yodel in front of him had always been upright and honest in everything he did. If he couldn't block it, I'm afraid the man named Oren would not have offspring, and Poppy would also lose his best human friend and old father. After fighting for a while, Oren kept feeding Poppy with moves, and Poppy had already tried his best, but whether it was strength or skills, the yodel had an unignorable gap with the tall human general. The man breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was not a fatal attack. General Oren, a new recruit who was watching the fight, exclaimed, but was stopped by his companion. That's how General Oren and that yodel fight. Don't panic. That yodel is a friend of General Oren. She won't really hurt General Oren. After understanding the relationship between the two parties, the new recruits looked at the training ground again with nervous eyes. It was General Oren who picked up the blue-skinned yodel and threw him far away like a big stone, instead of throwing him directly on the hard ground. Sure enough, General Oren didn't use much strength at all. After rolling and falling for several times, his whole body was covered with sand. Bobby stood up from the ground with an embarrassed look on his face and wiped his mouth. However, he did not mean to admit defeat. Instead, his momentum rose. Come again. rubbing his deflated belly armor. Oren was also full of fighting spirit. Come on. The two men wrestled and hugged each other again. For a moment, the training ground was full of dust. The two men completely let go of their hands and feet in the fight. They were bruised and swollen. Even the veteran soldiers of Demacia could not bear to watch. However, the soldiers understood that this was the most satisfying and happy state for General Oren, so no one stopped him to avoid ruining his mood. A fast horse ran from outside the barracks. A small blue flag was inserted behind the messenger. Pedestrians along the way took the initiative to avoid it. It was obviously an urgent military situation. General Oren. Urgent military situation. General Oren. Urgent military situation. Stopping his hand movements and shaking his head to Poppy to indicate a temporary stop to the fight, Oren frowned and looked at the hurried messenger. He rolled off the horse and came to Oren. The messenger approached Oren's ear, causing the other soldiers who wanted to know something to shake their heads in disappointment. After the messenger retreated, Oren patted the dust off his body and calmly gave orders. Demacia's 1st Legion. Everyone put on armor and swords. Assemble. Chapter 58 Barbarian Military Tradition. The rain didn't fall after all, and it couldn't fall. Morris pulled out the short knife from the tree trunk, and the broken snake head fell from the tree with a snap, falling into the pile of leaves. The next moment, it was put into the pocket of a soldier carrying a large bag. The soldier didn't mind the blood that had not yet dried. He pinched the still moving snake head and body and put them into the bag, not afraid of being bitten by the venomous snake that was not completely dead. Retracting his gaze from the tall and dense treetops, Morris breathed a sigh of relief. Even if he couldn't see the climate changing again, he could tell from the environment that became brighter than before that the dark clouds had retreated, just like the vitality of the deep quiet forest. At this time, it had been several hours since entering the quiet forest. In the complex environment of the dense forest, the soldiers seemed a little tired, and a few unlucky ones were bitten by hidden poisonous insects and almost died. Fortunately, the poisoned people were saved by the antidote herbs that had been prepared long ago. These antidote herbs were prepared in advance by the Nightblade Killer, and many of them could be picked in time in the dense forest. Lord Morris, how far is it to the Blackstone Forest? Even the most hard-working soldiers could not stand up to the dangerous environment of the dense forest, let alone the sword and shield soldiers wearing armor, holding long swords and iron shields. What's your name? Morris asked without turning his head, while observing the environment. Lord, my name is Sweet. I just joined the Narkson Black Iron Guard not long ago. I participated in the mine battle in the Silver Mountains, and killed 3 stinky rats. The soldier's tone was somewhat proud. Naturally, he knew what was in the closed mine cave in the Silver Mountains. Morris suddenly turned his head and looked at Sweet calmly. If I'll let you go into the mine cave alone to fight, would you dare? Sweet froze, and the picture of the overwhelming red-skinned rats drowning him suddenly appeared in his mind, and then he quickly shook his head. Are you kidding? In a war of hundreds of people, why should I go in alone to fight against the rats? I dare. Turning back again, Morris said lightly without turning his head. So you should ask fewer questions and do more things, because people who are better than you don't have as many questions as you do. Talking too much nonsense will only make people think you are an incompetent person. After being choked by Morris, Sweet did not dare to refute and continued on his way in a depressed mood. Taking his eyes off his companions, the spearman Alice sighed. She didn't think that there was anything to be proud of in such a battle. Her companion seemed to always think that the magic victory obtained at the cost of his companions' lives was his own credit. It is indeed glorious to fight the evil rats to the death, but this should not be an experience to show off to others, not to mention that it was Meredith's magic that finally laid the foundation for victory. There was no conversation along the way. When everyone walked to a place where the terrain became lower, a Nightblade Killer ran from a distance and whispered to Morris. There is a large group of jungle cat demons in front of the Blackstone Forest, about 30 or so, and we can't deal with them alone. You continue to explore forward and leave the cat demons to me. After giving the order, Morris turned around and said to the soldiers in a deep voice, Centurion, listen up, form a defensive counterattack formation in squads. There are more than 30 jungle cat demons ahead. Get ready for battle. Holding the spear tightly in her hand, Alice's eyes became more determined. No matter how difficult the future is, one day, she will stand by the Lord again, and defend the Lord's safety with her own life. In the meeting hall of the Immortal Fortress, Stender was discussing the military system and ownership of Naxos with the other tribal leaders. Before the Battle of Tano Village, other tribes still had doubts about whether the Arxxi clan could gain a foothold in the Immortal Fortress. Unexpectedly, an ancient remnant suddenly appeared and repelled the headless bandit group. He also miraculously defeated the two major tribes of Mostic barbarians and Ubal barbarians who were heading south. This result made the Arxxi clan successfully become the only owner of the Immortal Fortress. The other barbarian tribes lost their qualifications to compete. In addition, the secret society of the Immortal Fortress, the Black Rose, reached a secret agreement with the Arxxi clan, which made the Arxxi clan the ruler of the Immortal Fortress. Not wanting to be liquidated, or continue to be marginalized, seeing that the big family of Naxos was becoming more and more powerful, the small tribal leaders who were fence sitters began to think about how to manage the soldiers of their respective tribes, and how to gain more benefits for their own tribes. These still needed to be concluded at the negotiation table in the conference room. Everyone, we all have our own tribesmen and warriors. Think about it, who would trust a stranger to command their warriors? The one who spoke was the chief elder of the Stone tribe. In order to replace the tribe leader who suddenly had a stroke after sleeping for a night and became unable to walk independently, he had to bite the bullet and speak out his opinion. Maybe he could consider it when he returned, and let the tribe leader who had a stroke become poisoned, and become a tribe leader who cannot survive independently. So even if we joined Naxos, we still need to maintain our military traditions. Conquest and glory are the greatest spirits of Naxos. We also have the same desire for conquest and glory. We are consistent in spirit and we will fight side by side for this. Then we are considered as our own people. We are all Naxans. Therefore, I don't think it is necessary to unify the army. This is not conducive to management, and will also lose the military tradition of our Stone tribe. Then, on the issue of the tribe, I suggest that each tribe divide a self-managed area in the Immortal Fortress, so that there will be no conflicts. After listening to the opinion of the Stone tribe's great elder in full, Stender's right eyelid twitched. He always felt that the middle-aged man with twin ponytails sitting opposite him regarded himself as their patriarch. Perhaps a proper funeral should be arranged for this great elder, the kind with the word idiot engraved on the tombstone. Let's not talk about the issue of tribal autonomy. If you say that the military tradition of the Stone tribe is fighting as tenaciously as a stone, I can understand your opinion of wanting to retain the military tradition, but your military tradition seems to be throwing stones at the enemy. Why do you want to retain this? Are you going to play stone throwing with the enemy? After being choked by Stender, the elder of the Stone tribe blushed and slapped the table hard. The two ponytails were wagging, and the man explained in a bit of exasperation. The reason why we threw stones before was because we didn't have enough iron tools. For the tribe, a knife is much more practical for cutting meat than chopping people. Didn't we join Naxos just to? Don't we have weapons? Why would we continue to throw stones? You are making up excuses. The quarrel became louder and louder. Outside the half-open door of the conference room, Nadaz retracted his half-step foot, patted his smooth forehead, and turned to leave. It seems like I haven't been to my first wife for a long time. A real man shouldn't be partial to one over the other. I have to rant again. You can skip it. Covering face. After C-57 was released at midnight, it was locked in a small black room by the system for a whole night. It was only passed by manual review in the morning. It may be because of an overly sensitive and straightforward word. You can look for it. It's still there. It seems that I have to be more harmonious with the Force in the future. Hang, I would like to apologize to everyone here. I'm sorry for not being able to send out the chapters as soon as possible, making everyone wait in vain. Work report. With everyone's help, voting plus reading, this book has risen instead of falling, and has climbed from 97th to 88th on the new book list. Currently, it can increase by more than 400 collections a day. If this continues, the manuscripts may be lost every day. Covering face. I'm so happy. Thanks to the two readers, Hell5Good9 and Bookfriend2021061910000679 for their awards. Regarding the reward, because of the limited stock, Hangai will only add more chapters for the big guys above the helmsman. What Hangai wants to say is that everyone must reward when they have spare capacity. Students or readers without a stable source of income can just follow the reading and vote. Hangai also went through this. If you can't afford to subscribe after the book is put on the shelves, you can get on the train first and buy the ticket later. Those who understand will understand and come back to make up for the full subscription when you have spare capacity. This book will take a very long time to write, and it will be enough for everyone to give some company and encouragement. Let's take it slowly. Chapter 59 Magical World. Emerald Territory, Lord's Mansion. In the yard, Miss Ha and Hina were happily playing with magic crystal marbles. The marbles were made by Rose on Lester's behalf. In order to get Rose to produce enough magic crystals, Lester had put in a lot of effort, so he asked the female wizard to make a set of children's toys with precious magic crystal materials. In Rose's words, frequent contact with magic marbles can also increase magic adaptability. Unfortunately, even if the two little ones are not around, Lester can't rest. The omnipresent magic power is the source of magic. Magic is a specific characteristic of magic power and a regular expression. Everyone's magic talent is different from birth. Some people say that magic talent is a precious gift bestowed by the gods on everyone. In my opinion, it actually has a lot to do with the environment and bloodline. A person without magic talent who stays in an environment with abundant magic power for a long time will also gain some magic talent. Therefore, magic talent can actually be cultivated, but it is difficult to cultivate. As mentioned earlier, magic is a regular expression, which means that the caster must understand the properties and operation of magic power, and then guide the flow of magic power through a fixed path to complete the construction of the magic array disk, so that the magic power can be charged in the magic array disk. After reaching the critical value, the array disk can release magic in a directional manner according to the caster's wishes. In the eyes of mortals, the magic of the mage can be released without any signs, but in the eyes of the mage, the activation of any spell can be traced, provided that you can see the magic array constructed by another mage. Without the array disk, there is no formed magic. Pure magic power does not have much effect, unless it can move a mountain with magic power alone. In the battle between mages, most mages dodge, or use defensive spells, to resist the directional attack of the enemy's magic array. It is said that in the Dark Age after Yuzel's reincarnation, there were black magicians who could directly shatter the magic array and cause fundamental damage to another magician. Unfortunately, this way of fighting has been lost. Chanting helps to speed up the construction of the array. Some people use chanting to assist the memory of the array. Some people use chanting to enhance the output efficiency of magic power to the magic array and increase spiritual resonance. No matter what the chanting method is, the function is the same, which is to build the array faster, charge the array faster, release magic faster, and kill the enemy more effectively. Of course, there are also people who can cast spells quickly without chanting. Such people are called magic geniuses. In theory, there are people who can release magic without an array. At least I have never seen one. If there is, it must be a freak. Do you understand what I said? Lester hesitated and told the truth. I don't quite understand. There are many abstract things that I still don't quite understand. Meredith pointed to the magic crystal ball on the table and said to Lester patiently, "It's okay, Lord Lester, you can start by sensing the magic power. Put your hand on it. The larger the contact area, the more conducive it is to sensing the magic power. The crystal ball is a medium that amplifies the magic element. Proper use will help you understand the magic power." Nodding, Lester put his hand on the crystal ball. Closing his eyes, Meredith's voice was soft and calm. Think of the crystal ball as an extension of your limbs. Feel everything the crystal ball feels with your heart, and see what's around you. Having had the experience of meditation to create the lake of the mind, Lester easily understood what Meredith meant. The so-called lake of the mind is to put your attention and perception on the position of your pineal gland, the center of your eyebrows, and at this moment, you only need to focus on the crystal ball. In the darkness, Lester first saw the illusory outline of the crystal ball. As his attention became more and more focused, the outline of the crystal ball became clearer. Finally, a complete crystal ball appeared in the dark world. That's it. Use your heart to feel the environment outside the crystal ball. You have a good talent for magic. See what's around you. After an unknown amount of time, the crystal ball began to glow. Lester tried to lean towards the crystal ball in the dark. He didn't know what the point of doing this was, but his instinct told him that he should do it. The light of the crystal ball became more and more dazzling. In the dark, Lester pressed his spiritual hands, on the illusory crystal ball. In an instant, the dark world turned into a colorful world. The colorful streamers of light surrounded the body and danced around. There were butterflies or snowflakes of light flying around, like light elves, spinning and flying towards Lester. Meredith's voice had disappeared, and Lester's attention was completely shocked by the unimaginable scene in front of him. Palm-sized ice blue snowflakes with thousands of wings spun and fell on Lester's fingertips. Indistinctly, Lester felt a special intimacy. This was a joy from the heart that he had never had before. At this moment, the man always felt that his heart had been purified a lot, returning to the innocence and simplicity of a child. In his previous life, he loved snow and the snowflakes flying all over the sky. The big snowflake in front of him perfectly gathered all the beauty of snowflakes, which made Lester unable to look away. Seeing that the big snowflake was actively accepted by Lester, the other colorful elves took a step back and gave the most intimate position to the ice blue ice elf. Looking at the rhythmic rotating big snowflake landing on his fingertips with a smile, Lester gently touched the edge of the snowflake with the fingers of his other hand, and his movements were as gentle as treating a cute baby bird. The rotating snowflakes also slowed down their rotation speed in coordination. "Hello, I like you too." Outside the magic field, the crystal ball held by Lester suddenly burst out with a strong blue light, almost blinding Meredith's eyes. Compared with the eyes that could not be opened, the square-faced female wizard always felt that her heart was a little worse. Almost perfect affinity with ice elemental magic. What kind of freak is Lord Lester? Is he really the illegitimate son of a demigod in Freljord who is sleeping in the ancient ruins? If I could obtain Lord Lester's blood, protecting her eyes with a magic shield. The female mage with green eyes turned her eyes and quietly looked at Lester's handsome face reflected by the blue light. Her heart began to beat again, and the female mage with drooling mouth seemed to have returned to the first time she saw the man. The impulse brought by the deep desire that could not be suppressed made the female mage involuntarily reach out to the man with closed eyes and slowly reach for the man's face. If she can't have children, even if she just touches him, Brother Lester. The female mage instantly retracted her hand, wiped the saliva from the corner of her mouth with lightning speed, looked expressionlessly at the two little girls who pushed open the door and walked in, and then raised an index finger to indicate silence. Understanding what the female wizard meant, Miss and Hina nodded obediently, opened their eyes wide, and quietly watched the magical and beautiful scene in front of them. It has climbed to 83rd on the new book list. Shocked, thanks to the book friends, My Days in the Mountain and Sea World, for their awards, and thanks to the book friends, Street Light, The Years Are Quiet LJH, book friends. 201908171142055596 right square bracket left square bracket hell 5 good 9, who is worthy of, ice 9 underscore, cold winter wind, deep moon clear blue. For their monthly ticket support. Thank you all for your recommendation votes and encouragement. C57 is out. Can everyone see it? Chapter 60 Justice. In Demacia, more than 10 kilometers east of the village of Jangle, a legion of 100 men was moving slowly. Following the tall man, Popper's eyes kept looking at the big hammer behind the man. Just like he had repelled bandits and vagrants before, the man's big hammer would defeat the hateful Narxons this time. Thinking of this, when Poppy came to her senses, the man had already walked a long way, forcing Poppy to speed up her small steps and catch up with the majestic and invincible army. The 1st Legion of Demacia, excluding the militia responsible for logistics, is composed of professional warriors of Demacia. There are 2 components. The carefully selected 1st team has 50 people, wearing solid half-body iron-studded steel armor. The key positions such as the chest, waist, back, elbows, legs, and knees are all made of steel. They are equipped with full covering angle steel helmets and a 1.5 meter long sharp fine steel sword on their waists. Because the armor is hard, they are not equipped with shields. They are standard anti-infantry units. The second team had 200 people, wearing ordinary iron armor with iron inlays, which was slightly inferior to steel armor. There were 100 spear and shield guards, and 100 Demacia crossbowmen. The spear and shield guards were armed with 2-meter fine iron spears and zither-shaped wooden shields, which could resist cavalry attacks, defend against bows and arrows, and stabilize the front. The crossbowmen were all equipped with Demacia wooden crossbows and fine iron short swords on their waists, responsible for long-range attacks. Looking at the Demacia soldiers surrounding Oren, Poppy couldn't imagine what kind of enemy could defeat this well-equipped and imposing elite army. It seemed that the unfortunate Narxans were going to suffer. Thinking of this, Poppy quickened her pace again and ran to Oren. "Oren, can you defeat the Narxans?" Hearing the voice coming from beside him, Oren lowered his head skillfully and set his sights on his Yodel friend. "The Demacia army will not fear any invaders, Poppy. If the Narxans want to invade us, yes, I will lead everyone to defeat the Narxans, or die on the battlefield with everyone. What if the Narxans did not invade Demacia?" The nervous Poppy touched the magic shield she brought from Bandle City behind her, and felt more at ease, perhaps with Oren's determination. In any case, this was her first time stepping into a real battlefield. Compared with such a battle, fighting with barbarians and bandits was just a mess. "Then we won't have any battles. I believe that even the Narxans are not all barbarians with only missiles in their heads." Bending down and touching Poppy's little head, Oren smiled and comforted the Yodel in his own way. "I will negotiate with them and explain to them the border of Demacia. Since Narxus was founded in the Immortal Bastion, Demacia has not had any exchanges with Narxus. Perhaps this is a suitable opportunity. Is this what you call justice?" Poppy looked at Oren, and the man nodded firmly. "Yes, this is justice. Demacia only fights for justice. Defending the country is the oath that Demacia soldiers need to defend with their lives. Unjust wars will not happen in Demacia." Poppy nodded, always feeling that he had learned a lot. Following Oren, he always learns a lot. Deep in the quiet forest, outside a hot mountain cave, as if burned by charcoal fire, the trees here exude a black cold and hard luster. More than 30 cat demons gathered in the forest were vulnerable in the army. Many soldiers had a few warm cat demon skins in their bags. Other beasts also sensed the danger and did not want to become corpses, so they had to flee, providing a good marching route for the soldiers. Under Morris's command, the soldiers of the Narxan Black Iron Guard successfully arrived at the Blackstone Forest without any casualties and began to chop trees with the two-handed axes they carried. The two-handed axes made of fine iron seemed a little powerless on the hard trunks of the Blackstone wood, but no matter how hard the trees were, they could not resist the perseverance and determination. One by one, the straight Blackstone trees were felled to the ground and then carried out of the forest by the soldiers. There were soldiers standing guard along the way, so there would be no blind beasts coming to die. Humans with order and power still have many means to conquer the forest. The well-developed roads greatly reduced the soldiers' transportation time, and the return journey was compressed within an hour. Soon, under the operation of many people, the Narxan temporary camp outside the tranquil forest was piled with fresh Blackstone wood. After the carriages were filled with Blackstone wood, the carriages would transport the wood to the war workshop in the Emerald Territory, and the old blacksmith would throw it into the blazing furnace. It was already the 10th day since the Narxan Black Iron Guard's logging team came to the tranquil forest. Many poisoned or rotating soldiers came out from the depths of the dense forest and lived in the temporary camp. They were so bored that they stared at the Demacia sentinels far away on the Greentooth Peak. There were even a few men who read different emotions and meanings from each other's eyes, and a few simple men often blushed. At noon, when the soldiers were cooking, a shadow crossbowman sentry ran from the direction of the Greentooth Peak and entered the largest tent in the camp without looking back. "Report. There is an urgent military situation. Come in." Apsal put down his quill pen, closed the ink dye box, and put away the Blackstone wood statistics scroll in the temporary warehouse. "Lord Apsal, there is a Demacian army of more than 100 people approaching us. His face changed, and Apsel stood up from the stool. Did the scouts find any other information? The shadow crossbowman shook his head. No, the Dalmatians also sent out agile scouts to surround the army. Our scouts were discovered after just a glance from a distance. Fortunately, the Dalmatians did not attack us. Continue to monitor the movements of the Dalmatians. Yes. After leaving the tent, Apsel called the horn soldier. Tell everyone that the mealtime is over. Woo 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 woo. The dull and solemn horn sounded through the sky, and the soldiers of the Narkson Black Iron Guard quickly finished the barbecue and bread in their hands, picked up their weapons, and ran to the open space outside the barracks. Including the shadow crossbowmen sent out for reconnaissance, there were less than 90 people in the camp at the moment. Apsel pondered for a moment and quickly issued an order. Defend the camp in a defensive posture. No one is allowed to attack without my order. PS1. It has fallen off the new book list TPS2. Book friends like C57 and C58. Please try to delete the book and then add it to the bookshelf again. It shows normal here. If it still doesn't work, I will find another way. Chapter 61 Sentinel and General. Waking up in a sweat, the sound of the Narkson horn was the dull sound. Winster sat up with a lingering fear, his brain a little confused. The beautiful dream was shattered, and the cold reality appeared before his eyes. The sound of the Narkson military horn echoed in the sky, stirring the tense nerves of all Dalmatians. This is simply the worst situation. Winster could no longer care about anything else. He jumped up from the wooden bed in the sentry post, picked up the long sword on the wall and ran out. The other sentinels saw the sentinel coming out and breathed a sigh of relief. At least they didn't have to go in and disturb the sentinel's sweet dream. Several sentinels looked at each other, then looked away at the same time, with a natural look on their faces. At this time, Sventer had just run into the sentry post on the east foot of Greentooth Peak, and turned over, and dismounted with an anxious look on his face. Winster greeted him, with a tense face, and said in a deep voice, "Are the Narksons coming? How many of them are there?" "No, they just lined up. It looks like there are more than 100 of them." "Will they attack?" "Probably not. They are in a defensive posture." "Why are they lining up?" Sventer frowned. "I don't know. Maybe for vigilance?" "Why do people who take naps every day have so many questions?" "There must be a reason why they lined up. We must respond accordingly." Winster, who was confused, was halfway through his words when a scout on a fast horse ran from behind the sentry post. The serious-looking rider pulled the reins, and with a hiss, the horse stopped in front of the sentry, panting. "General Oren's 1st Legion will be here soon. Why are you so panicked? Hurry up and pack up, and get ready to welcome General Oren." After being scolded by the scout of the 1st Legion, Winster thought of another aspect instead, and his face looked a little unhappy. Is the formation for defense for General Oren's 1st Legion? How did the Narksons know about General Oren's coming before us? Oren, with his army, came to the last outpost at the outermost ring of the Dalmatia border under the Green Fang Peak. Oren met the director of the outpost, the great sentinel Winster, who was willing to be stationed in the most dangerous area. But the smell of this outpost was strange. The beds were not folded up, and there was a unique smell of men inside and outside. However, thinking that a group of men would not have any fragrance together, Oren was relieved. He took a deep look at Winster, turned his eyes away from Poppy, who was holding his nose and frowning, and coughed twice with bruises on his face. "Tell me about the situation at the outpost." Scratching his head, Winster looked at General Oren, whose right face was a little swollen, with some embarrassment. After hesitating for a while, he decided to turn a blind eye. Currently, the outpost has a total of. After briefly summarizing the situation of the outpost to General Oren, Winster closed his mouth and looked at Oren eagerly. Nodding to Winster, Oren continued to ask, "Are the Narksons still in the Silent Forest? What is their purpose in the Silent Forest?" "Yes, they are still there, and they have set up a camp. I guess it's not a spur of the moment decision. The Narksons started transporting some kind of blackwood 5 days ago. I asked the hunters, and found out that it was the Blackstone Wood deep in the Silent Forest. From this, it can be seen that they must be setting up a semi-permanent logging camp. In your opinion, do the Narksons express some hostility towards us?" Winster shook his head, and was very sure. No, my sentinels have confirmed this, but their soldiers often glare at my sentinels. If glaring is not considered hostility, then there should be no hostility. After a moment of silence, Oren stood up. It seems that we still have the possibility of talking to the Narxans. Young man, you. Halfway through his words, Oren looked at the sloppy and embarrassed sentinel and decided to change to a more reliable candidate. General, it's okay. You'd better take a rest and fold the quilt. Looking at Oren's back, Winster always felt that he seemed to have lost some opportunity and couldn't help cursing inwardly. Damn it. After saying so much, General Oren didn't even ask my name. Outside the sentry post, Oren took a look at Sventa, who was leading the horse. It only took him 3 seconds to confirm that the person in front of him was a meticulous responsible sentry. Soldier, what's your name? With his fists crossed in front of his chest, Sventa bowed slightly and saluted Oren. General Oren, my name is Sventa. Looking at Sventa, who had a military atmosphere in front of him, Oren, who had a good impression of him, said in a deep voice. Sventa, now there is a very dangerous mission for you. Ride your plane's horse to the Narxan camp and tell them that I, Oren, want to talk to their highest commander. Do you dare to take this mission? He jumped on the horse directly and looked at Oren without fear. General, I'm a sentinel, and more importantly, a soldier. Demacia soldiers are never afraid of danger. Watching Sventa leave, Oren withdrew his admiring gaze and looked at the yodel beside him. Poppy, what do you think of this man? Although he was a little surprised that Oren would ask him such a question, Poppy still expressed his feelings. I feel that he is a bit like you. Oren's face was more smiling. I think so too. Maybe it's a bit of a waste of talent to let him be a sentinel. The Demacia Rangers have not yet been established. Maybe I can let him try. Sventa was getting closer and closer to the military camp outside the Silent Forest. He could clearly sense that some kind of deadly murderous intent had locked onto him. There was no doubt that this breathtaking murderous intent came from the opposite side, and his life and death were no longer under his control. He got off his horse, untied the sword at his waist towards the Narxan soldier, and slowly placed it on the ground. Fear can't do anything. He needs to suppress the fear to keep himself alive. Narxan soldiers, I have no hostility. I'm Sentinel Sventa of Demacia. I have important news to convey to your superiors. He stopped tentatively, waiting for the Narxan's response. Take off all your weapons. Sentinel Sventa, you can come over. Even though the evolved Demacia and Narxan languages are quite different, after all, they both come from the ancient Valoran continent, so Sventa roughly understood what the other party meant. Even if you can't write, you will always know the general meaning. Then, he took off all his weapons and walked over. Daily reflections in the small black room. Delete, delete, and delete again. TWT. The impact of not being able to publish on time is too great. Everyone can't read along, and they are unwilling to vote. It seems that I have to reduce the frequency of driving in the future, otherwise it will be a headache for me to always be in the small black room. Daily vote request. Go for it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62. The first meeting between Demacia and Narxus. In the Narxan camp in the Silent Forest, inside Apsal's tent. That legion, is it led by your General Oren? Yes, Lord Apsal. General Oren asked me to pass on a message, saying that he wants to see you. Sventa in front of Apsal was not tied up, or controlled by any restraints. As an envoy, he did feel the sincerity of Narxus, or in other words, apart from the necessary vigilance, he did not have much hostility towards Demacia. Therefore, he did not hesitate to express his most basic respect to the Narxan military commander in front of him. He was not stupid enough to ask the Sentinel envoy Oren what he wanted to discuss. Apsal thought that his identity and status were not enough to negotiate with Oren, but it did not prevent him from listening to what the other party wanted to say. Anyway, it was Oren who made the request first, and it would not be considered rude if he went out. Go back and tell General Oren that I can't make the decision on important matters. It's okay to have a simple talk. If you want to talk, he and I can only bring one helper and hold the meeting at the midline between Greentooth Peak and Silent Forest. Understood, Lord Dapsul. Then I'll leave first. Svente had already left, knocking on the small wooden table in the tent, and Apsul stood up. He was going to find the Nightblade assassin stationed in the camp. Orin looked at the strange Linoop on the opposite side, a young Narxan officer and a masked weirdo in black cloth armor. Turning his head, Orin looked to his lower right, a blue-skinned Yodel carrying a shield. It seemed that he had no qualifications to laugh at the other side. This was really a strange meeting. If it could be recorded in the history of Ilorin, it would be very interesting. Under the tense gaze of hundreds of people, both sides stopped 10 meters away. Let's leave the followers behind and talk alone, Commander Apsa. Of course, General Orin. Apsa took the initiative to leave the sword at his waist where it was, and Orin also handed the Hammer of Glory to Poppy, which made Poppy very excited. She touched it left and right, looking at it with a look of love. She guessed that the reason why Orin was so powerful was because of the hammer. Now was a rare opportunity to explore the hammer. It was not until they met face to face that Apsa understood why Demacia could gain a foothold on the west coast, where the Freljord barbarians were rampant. Just the meritorious Demacia general in front of him embodied the qualities that an excellent soldier should have. Steady, resolute, firm, tenacious, and pursuing glory. He didn't understand why so many words appeared in his mind after seeing the tall man in front of him. He only knew that he was indeed not qualified to negotiate with the Demacia general in front of him, or in other words, he was not qualified at the moment. Thinking of this, he felt very honored to stand in front of this person. General Orin, it's an honor to meet you in this way. Taking the lead and giving Orin an Narxan military fist salute, Apsul showed his respect to the elder in front of him. Captain Apsul, I'm also honored to meet you. Without any airs or arrogant attitude, Orin also gave a Demacia military salute to the young man, who was obviously just out of the scope of a teenager. He understood that, no matter how young he was, the other party was the highest commander of the Narxan army on the opposite side, not to mention that the other party took the lead in showing proper courtesy to him. He liked to communicate with people who knew etiquette, regardless of race or country. General Orin, we in Narxus have no hostility, and we are not prepared to have any friction with Demacia. I think I should say this first. After all, it was because we sent troops first that caused misunderstandings. Orin savored Apsul's words, considered it for a while, and said with a smile, I think this is important enough, because the soldiers of Demacia have been very uneasy recently. If Narxus also wants to continue to maintain peace, I think every soldier of Demacia can sleep well tonight. Hahaha, you are really funny. After a simple test, both sides could not help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief. No matter which side, they were not prepared for war. No one could afford the consequences of rashly starting a war because of minor frictions and misunderstandings. Although it is very presumptuous, but Commander Apsul, I would like to ask when you will withdraw from the Silent Forest. After hesitating for a while, Apsul said what Lester meant. General Orin, the Silent Forest will be the lumberyard of the Emerald Territory in the future. I don't think we will leave. I hope that the Demacia soldiers on the other side of the mountain will not pay too much attention to us. Otherwise we will be ashamed if we can't sleep well. The harmonious atmosphere stagnated slightly, and Orin restrained his smile. Does Narxus still want to graze in the peaks and valleys of Greenfang Peak and Eternal Peak? Apsul's smile also disappeared from his face, and he said lightly without giving in. General, I don't understand what you mean. I just think that it is reasonable for the Emerald Territory to occupy the Tranquil Forest as an unowned land. Since the other side of the mountain is already Demacia's pasture, the Emerald Territory will naturally not do anything extra. Or do you think that the Tranquil Forest belongs to Demacia's territory? But when I explored the Tranquil Forest, I didn't find any Demacia soldiers or sentry towers. Did you remember it wrong? Although they had a basic understanding of the other party's bottom line, when it came to serious issues such as territory, neither Orin nor Apsul could play a decisive role, let alone make any promises. They couldn't decide what Demacia wanted, or what Narxus wanted at the snap of a finger. This was something that needed to be discussed and agreed upon by the highest decision makers of both forces, and they only had the right to execute. Therefore, they could only keep their soldiers occupied to ensure that their territory was not invaded and expanded by the other side. Maybe I remembered it wrong. Oren stared at Apsul with a frown, trying to put some pressure on the young Narkson. Captain Apsul, I just hope that the Narksons will not continue to expand westward. The Galaxy Run is not long enough to accommodate 2 states. It is better for both sides to make the area north of the tranquil forest a borderline for Dino, otherwise it will easily cause misunderstandings. Looking at the man who was demonstrating against him without showing any weakness, Apsul tightened his legs that were about to tremble and responded toughly against the powerful momentum that was coming towards him. The Galaxy Run is indeed not long, but it is enough for Demacia and Naxos to use together. Since Demacia's pastures have extended to the Green Fang Peak, it should stop there. A pasture that is too large is useless. After all, you Demacians don't have so many forbidden magic stones to build a city, right? The atmosphere became a little scary. Oren and Apsul stared at each other, not giving in. Poppy and Nightblade also perked up, staring at each other with serious faces, ready to attack at any time. Behind Poppy and Nightblade, the soldiers of the 1st Legion of Demacia and the Narkson Black Iron Guards and Shadow Crossbowmen were ready to go. At this moment, any action that could easily make people suspect hostility would lead to unpredictable consequences and trigger a war between 2 powerful forces. However, the 2 men relaxed their expressions, and Oren took the initiative to extend his right hand. You are very good, Commander Apsul. Relieved, Apsul shook it. It's my duty, General Oren. I hope you can understand my impoliteness. Nodding, Oren looked at the vast and sparsely populated plains in the distance. Now this land is still very large and there are still few people. We still have enough time. Yes, General, the Emerald Territory thinks so too. We all have enemies of each other, and there is no need to hurt the harmony. Looking deeply at Apsul, Oren shook his head and turned away. After watching Oren and the Yodel people leave, Apsul also turned around and walked towards the main camp. C61 is in prison, major changes, and applying for lifting the ban. Woo woo woo. This chapter has 2.5k, so I'll post it earlier. Hangai is too embarrassed to ask for votes. I didn't expect that there would be so many book friends supporting me without posting new chapters. I'm sorry to everyone. Thanks to bookfriend 20210406191000679. Pope of the Void, Second Dimension Fox, for their awards, and thanks to S Street Light, the years are Quiet LJH, Ancient Well Without Waves. Hey, I've already got this name, carrot_carrot, for their monthly ticket support. Chapter 63 reporting. The news of Demacia's dispatch of troops was received by Margaret stationed in the Silver Mountains. That night, Margaret went to Lester's mansion. After passing through many guards, Margaret knocked on the wooden door of the Lord's mansion. Lord Lester? No response. After hesitating for a while, Margaret still pushed open the unlocked wooden door. The stove on the 1st floor had gone out, leaving only the bright charcoal still flickering with a warm red light. After closing the door, the iron boots stepped on the wooden board, making a heavy thumping sound, but it could not cover up the lewd sound coming from upstairs. She didn't understand that the walls of the house were equipped with sound-absorbing materials deliberately prepared by Lester, and the sound in the house could not be transmitted, so she was worried that if someone heard something. Margaret's face suddenly turned red, her movements became stiff, and she suddenly had a sense of guilty conscience. Sitting carefully on the chair, Margaret put her hands on her thighs awkwardly, feeling a bit overwhelmed. Thinking that she had just arrived at the most critical moment, the girl sat and waited for more than 10 minutes, but the upstairs did not mean to stop at all. Instead, the bedboard became more and more arrogant and noisy. The boat in the storm was swaying with the waves, the tides rose and fell, day and night. No wonder GC couldn't hold the sword during training recently, and her legs and feet were weak. No one could bear this. Lord Lester, this is too outrageous. Won't it hurt your body to do this? After waiting for another half an hour, the GC jukebox stopped and was replaced by the Tally jukebox. Margaret scratched her head frantically, and her hair was messed up. I can't wait any longer. I must report the military situation to Lord Lester. With determination, the girl stood up, tidied her clothes, retied her ponytail, and walked upstairs. The shameful sound became louder and louder. Although her steps were still firm, the girl's legs could not help but tremble, and her whole body was hot and unbearable. Business is important. Business is important. Taking a deep breath, Margaret suppressed her restlessness and came to the door. Then, she saw the glare of the open door. Oh, no, it was the stern-looking Lord Dragonbert. The girl stood at attention and glanced around. For a moment, she didn't know whether her eyes should be on Lord Lester or Lord Dragonbird. The next second, her eyes and the charred brain matched successfully, and both were fed. Her eyes began to turn in circles, and her flexible mouth began to move independently, freely expressing her thoughts. Burst, pack. It's like this. Apsil sent someone to say that General Oren of Demacia sent a legion to the Silent Forest to negotiate with us. Apsil was worried that Demacia would attack us, so he asked me for support. Lester breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. I see. Sooner or later, we will have a negotiation with Demacia. Don't worry. If it's Oren, Apsil won't be able to fight. Yes. That dragon. Lord, I'll leave first. Margaret stood up stiffly, and before she could turn around, she heard Lester ask, is there any problem in the Silver Mountains? Report to Lord Lester. No, the Black Rose Mage confirmed that there are no rats active at the entrance of the mine at the moment, and they should have retreated again. Okay, but there is another thing I want to tell you. Margaret was stunned. I can see, my female general, you are very tired, you need enough rest. Lester said softly, holding Margaret's hand, and placing Margaret on the bed again. Go take a bath, sleep here with me tonight, and have a good rest. I will send someone to check on the Silver Mountain Range. You are not allowed to refuse. This is an order. Margaret lowered her head shyly, as if she saw her own end. Those two barbarian salted fish are her future. Yes. After washing her body with hot water in the underground bath, Margaret's face was red, and she changed into the women's underwear prepared by Lester. The girl was both looking forward to and a little afraid of what was about to happen. After thinking that she was not young anymore and should consider giving birth to offspring, the girl's fear was much less, and the remaining fear was still because of the dancing dragon bird. But more or less, the girl still felt a little lost, perhaps because she thought too much of herself and would grow up casually. Then, the girl was gently carried to bed by Lester, who came back from the door. I have arranged everything. Go to sleep, Margaret, and have a good rest. Sometimes you push yourself too hard. You should also try to learn to rely on me. The expected scene did not happen. Margaret understood that the man simply hugged her, silently tidied her hair, took off the hair rope, and gently gathered her hair outside the pillow. This made her understand that she was more important to the man than just an ordinary woman. He cared about her very much. Feeling the unprecedented peace and sweetness in her heart, Margaret, who was already very tired, completely relaxed her body and gradually fell asleep. In her dream, the girl held the man's hand and dreamed of flying in the sky with dragons. This was the sweetest sleep she had had in recent days. Designing the blueprints of standard armor and weapons for the Black Iron Guards and Nightblade Assassins, demarcating the border with Demacia, learning magic from Meredith, exploring the creation process of new life with others, monitoring the Silver Mountains, inspecting the military camps, and formulating training plans, playing with the two angel sisters, entertaining new visitors from the Emerald Territory. Lester looked very idle, but seriously speaking, he was never idle. The civilization of this era seemed to have a fault. He didn't know what was happening in Shurima or Ionia, but judging from the continent of Iloran, both Demacia and Naxos were still in the barbaric era with tribes as the core. Everything was just beginning. Even the cheapest and most convenient paper in later generations was a luxury in this era. You had to use expensive fur scrolls to write something, which made the inheritance of knowledge difficult. The problem of paper alone prevented Lester, who wanted to popularize some cultural knowledge in the Emerald Territory, from taking the first step, not to mention the expected establishment of an academy in the Emerald Territory. Life has become difficult. Let's set up a group. After we have an operations officer. It's boring to keep changing it. Try to reduce the risk of encountering traffic jams. Chapter 64 Magic Steel Weapons. In the southern area of Emerald Territory, at the War Workshop, Lester was listening to Crystal, whose eyes were glowing green, talking about the research results of the past half month. My lord, the best answer to alloy weapons is to melt and forge mountain copper and fine steel in a certain proportion. Although it will lose some of its ability to absorb magic element, it can obtain a hardness and weapon performance far exceeding that of fine steel weapons. It can easily penetrate the plate armor made of fine steel and cut off the fine steel longsword without hurting itself. As he spoke, the sturdy old blacksmith picked up an unsheathed dark red longsword placed on the weapon table. Judging from the style, it was no different from an ordinary Narkson longsword. The old blacksmith poked hard at the bright silver fine steel plate armor worn on the wooden man. Sparks flashed from the friction of the metal, and the fine steel plate armor, which was half a centimeter thick, was easily pierced. Then, with a strong pull, the dark red longsword that had pierced a deep puncture mark on the wooden pillar was pulled out. Lester looked at it, and found that the blade or the tip of the sword was indeed not damaged, and the break was extremely smooth. You are right, this sword does have the effect of breaking armor. That's not all. I'm showing you the sharpness and hardness of the magic steel sword, indicating his apprentice Steiner, to stand the fine iron sword on the anvil, without any reluctance. Crystal enthusiastically raised the magic steel sword, and chopped it down with force. With a clang sound, the fine steel sword broke. You can see it for yourself. Taking the magic steel sword, Lester stroked the sharp edge for a long time. There is no doubt that this sword is a top-level killing weapon. Using his experience as a killer in his previous life, Lester gave his own evaluation. It's just that it's much heavier than a fine steel sword, and it's hard for ordinary soldiers who don't have the required strength to use it. Have you ever considered modifying the style and structure of the magic steel sword to appropriately reduce material loss and weight? Sorry, Lord, arbitrarily changing the sword's shape and structure is likely to affect the service life of the sword. There is no master manufacturer who can independently design weapons in the War Workshop. You asked me to make some traditional equipment, but I may not be able to do other things. Lester looked at the old blacksmith deeply, nodded without comment, and said, "Go on." "Yes." Crystal breathed a sigh of relief. Coming to the weapon placement table, the old blacksmith Crystal picked up a finely shaped pure metal mechanical crossbow. Lester noticed that under the firelight of the furnace, the crossbow arm emitted a dim red light arc, exuding a bloodthirsty and cold deadly beauty. Unfortunately, compared with the pulley crossbow he had seen in his previous life, it was still too bloated, and the chin was too thick. However, apart from the design concept, the old blacksmith was indeed quite skilled in casting, which made him wonder if he was from the Liu family in the north. Unfortunately, the old blacksmith did not admit it, and he had no evidence. "This is the Dark Blood Demon crossbow that I made by decomposing the small crossbow of the red-skinned demon rat. Please allow me to call it that. Just because she is so beautiful, I must name it myself. She is a killing weapon comparable to the magic steel sword. I believe she can easily hunt down the proud and powerful two-legged dragons in the Urus Mountains." Picking up a special magic steel crossbow from the table, Crystal narrowed his eyes and aimed the semicircular crosshairs on the slide at the plate-armored wooden man on the other side who had been hit by a sword. This crossbow is extremely lethal. With the specially made magic steel crossbow arrows, it can break armor and break magic. The only shortcoming is that it cannot fire continuously, and because the crossbow blade is very elastic, it takes a lot of strength to wind it. Like the magic steel longsword, it is a perfect weapon that ordinary people cannot use. It needs a real fearless warrior to dominate and control it. He supported the crossbow head of the dark blood magic crossbow on the ground, stepped on the footrest ring of the crossbow head with his right foot, and pulled the animal tendon bowstring with both hands at the same time. His face turned red before he pulled the bowstring onto the hook in the slide, so that the bowstring was tightly hung by the hook. "It takes so much effort for you to wind it." Lester laughed and drew a big cross on the practicality of this crossbow. He was a little embarrassed to install 3 3-edge magic steel crossbow arrows on the arrow nest under the slide. It takes some effort to string the bowstring, but you won't be disappointed with its power. After saying that, the old blacksmith gently pushed the arrow loading mechanism of the arrow nest. With a crisp click, the crossbow arrow was pushed from the metal slide to the front of the bowstring. The working principle of the magazine-like bullet transport made Lester's eyes light up. How many crossbow arrows can be loaded in the arrow nest? Just as he was about to pull the trigger, he heard Lester's question. Not wanting Lester to be distracted and miss the wonderful moment, the old blacksmith stopped his action. 5 at most, including the ones that have been strung. Lord, can I start the demonstration? Begin. Aiming at the plate armor wooden man again, the old blacksmith pulled the trigger to control the hook. With a whoosh, the red light with after images drilled into the plate armor at a speed that was hard to see with the naked eye and continuously penetrated the front and back to layers of plate armor and the leather wooden man in the middle, biting deeply into the fine steel plate behind the wooden man and penetrating 1/3 of the body. Lester's eyes lit up and he quickly came to the plate armored wooden man to observe the shooting effect. The old blacksmith put down the crossbow and continued. I have tried it. The maximum range of this crossbow can reach more than 1,000 meters. Within a range of 500 meters, it can continuously penetrate less than 3 sets of fine steel plate armor, and there is no possibility of trajectory deviation. Looking at the proud look of the old blacksmith, Lester smiled. Then have you tested how long a beast tendon bowstring can be used? How many times can an ordinary soldier pull the bowstring continuously at a time? How many crossbow arrows can a dark blood demon crossbow shoot when it is constantly shooting? On the battlefield, before the cavalry rushes, how much time do our soldiers have to restring the bowstring? Hearing a series of questions, the old blacksmith was stunned. Patting the old blacksmith on the shoulder, Lester seemed to be speaking with some seriousness. I know you are eager for new materials and new weapons, and you are also keen on maximizing lethality, but weapons are the key to the safety of soldiers' lives, and there must be no mistakes. The Dark Blood Demon crossbow is powerful, but blindly pursuing great power will not allow our soldiers to survive on the battlefield. This crossbow is very good, but as a weapon, it is not qualified, and can only be used to deal with some special situations. Qualified weapons need to be constantly tested and modified before they can be used on the battlefield to win. We still have time, please don't be too anxious. Crystal was a little depressed and apologized to Lester. My lord, I was too aggressive. You are right. I apologize to you. Waving his hand, Lester's voice softened a little. You don't need to apologize. You've done well enough, and I believe in your ability. The Dark Blood Demon crossbow will eventually become the secret weapon of the Emerald Territory and will shine one day in the future. What we have to do now is to improve it, at least to solve the problems of the durability and winding frequency of the bowstring. As for the bowstring, there will be no problem using the dragon tendons of a wyvern. I'm confident of this. As for whether other creatures have durable rubber bands, I don't know. As for the problem of winding, we can only reduce the thickness of the crossbow arm appropriately. Although it will also reduce the power of the crossbow arrows, it will definitely be too powerful to use against humans. Well, I have a way to reduce the tension of the winding without reducing the thickness of the crossbow arm, and the power should not be reduced if possible. What method? Do you know a pulley? Pulley? Please recommend. Please vote for the monthly ticket, and please read and support me. I have more than 60 chapters in stock. What if I can't finish posting them after they are put on the shelves? I'm more anxious than you. Chapter 65. The dispute is settled. Leaving behind the standard armor and weapon design sketches of the Narcs and Black Iron Guards that he designed himself, Lester explained the labor-saving principle of the pulley to Crystal and his apprentice Steiner. The two of them were immediately like possessed and could no longer care about anything else and began a new round of design experiments. In this regard, Lester could only choose to find another opportunity to discuss the equipment of the Nightblade Killer with the old blacksmith. It was already noon when he came out of the war workshop. Lester got into the carriage and went directly back to his mansion. Due to the shortage of manpower and insufficient ore reserves, the quarries in the south have been temporarily suspended, and the quarry workers have gone north to the mines in the Urus Mountains to become miners. Naturally, without the source of stone, the Lord's Castle of the Emerald Territory began to suspend construction indefinitely, and the remaining stone was barely enough for the military camp to be used. Most of the current training grounds are still open air, without even a place to shelter from the wind and rain, and the bunkers of the Nightblade Killers are the same, and they can't be built at all. Thinking about something, Lester just got off the carriage and rushed to the front with two cute little guys. The man's face lit up with joy. "Miss Hannah, you're here." He picked them up one by one, and the two little ones leaned against Lester's arms skillfully, with a flash of excitement in their eyes. "Brother Lester, you haven't told me what happened to you that day." I asked Aunt Meredith, but she told me to ask you. "Can you tell me?" Hannah gently shook Lester's right arm, and the girl's fluttering hair made Lester's neck a little itchy. "I know it's magic. The Dalmatians are most afraid of magic. Obviously, magic is very useful. It can heat water, make fire and cook, and can also be used for hunting." Miss Hannah, who took a magic hot bath at Lester's house every day, counted on her fingers and added, her soft golden hair sweeping back and forth on her arms. "I don't know if Jess sprinkled flower petals when she bathed the little guys today." Lester smelled a refreshing floral fragrance on the two little guys. It was a scent of violets. "Where did this girl just get the flower petals?" "That's the magic crystal ball helping me sense the magic element," Lester explained briefly as they walked towards the house. Everyone has a talent for magic, but being able to sense the magic element is the first step on the path to becoming a mage. Closing his eyes, Lester felt the light of the ice elves gradually flying towards him, and continued. "Do you feel cold now? Really? It's suddenly so cold." Miss Hannah was a little surprised, looking at the lush trees and bright sunshine around her, but her body was shaking instinctively. Stopping the magic meditation, Lester let the ice blue light representing the magic element dissipate, and the temperature immediately returned to normal. Feeling the cold leave, Zinna pulled Lester's arm. "Then can we learn magic together?" "Of course, if you are interested, come and learn with me." "Great. We can also learn magical magic." Miss Hannah cheered, and in Lester's stunned expression, she pecked Lester's left cheek. Seeing Lester's surprised expression, Miss Hannah realized what she had done. She turned her face away, her cheeks flushed, but her tone was too deliberate. "I just touched you accidentally, why are you so stingy?" With a pout, Hannah looked at her sister dissatisfiedly, then turned her head and kissed Lester's right cheek seriously, making her saliva everywhere. "Brother Lester, does the kiss feel good?" "Hannah likes you," Hannah said weakly, but the look she gave her sister was very sharp, as if mixed with a bit of provocation. Lester was stunned. Are these two sisters a little bit wrong? Shouldn't the sisters be united? Isn't it because of the lack of gold? Wait, I'm not the one whose gold was broken? In a trance, Lester seemed to see himself being hit by Morgana's cue, and then being split in half by Kyle's under Kyle's fanatical expression. Then the two sisters each held a half, flapped their wings, and flew away quickly, with a satisfied look on their faces. The man was sweating coldly. The power of the demigod was no joke. "Sister Sheena, do you think you are so powerful?" Somewhat anxious and a little exasperated, Miss had also attacked Lester's left face again. "Sister, give up. Brother Lester will not like you." Not willing to be outdone, Sheena smeared saliva on Lester's right face again. Hearing the movement from outside the door, Meredith pushed the door open and looked at the indifferent man sandwiched between the two little girls with saliva all over his face in shock. She felt extremely complicated. Obviously, whether it was the Barbarian sisters or the Miss Ha sisters, Lester had already decided to be his future woman, which was enough to show that Lester liked sisters. Then, should I also find a sister or a sister? Somehow, Meredith thought of Rose, but then quickly rejected the idea. Of course, it was not, because Miss Rose was too scary and mysterious. It's not just about sisters, but also about appearance. Lord Lester is very picky. Although I'm useful now, I still can't catch Lord Lester's eye. Having come to this conclusion, Meredith sighed and turned back to the house. Lester followed him into the house and closed the door. It was time to learn magic again, but this time there were two more annoying goblins. There was also a female wizard who was giving a class, but thinking about how to beautify herself. Oren finally led the First Legion to evacuate the Green Tooth Peak outpost, and also took Sventa, who was about to join the Ranger Corps. If the troops were not withdrawn, apart from other things, the logistics problem alone could not be guaranteed. In order to deliver enough food to the Legion, the Forbidden Magic Stone transport ship traveling between the Milky Way had not transported construction materials to the vicinity of the outpost for many days. Since it has been confirmed that the Narxons will stop east of Green Fang Peak, For Auron, he can explain his past to Jarvan Dark, so there is no need to cause any more trouble. After all, when Demacia was established on the west coast, everyone had already discussed that they would build a country that would not be disturbed by magic and would not be attacked by magic runes within the range of the forbidden magic stone forest. Outside the Green Fang Peak, it is flat and difficult to defend, but there is no place suitable for building the forbidden magic stone city. Only the location of Green Fang Peak and Eternal Peak can perfectly link the Silver Mountains and Eurus Mountains on the north and south sides, which is enough to combine the forbidden magic stone to create a steep city gate that can be blocked by one man and 10,000 men, becoming the most perfect borderline for Demacia. After Auron withdrew his troops, Apsar also summarized Auron's meaning in detail and sent someone to convey it to Lester. At this time, the Narkson logging camp outside the quiet forest had stabilized, and a lot of blackstone wood used to smelt mountain copper could be produced every day. The dispute in Denner was settled, and everything was moving towards peace. One day, someone walked out of the natural cave in the Silver Mountains and saw the fully armed Narkson Black Iron Guards guarding the mountains. Then, this person was arrested. Chapter 66 The Spy Dungeon in Emerald Territory. In the eastern part of the Emerald Territory, in the military camp dungeon, Natividad had observed the new environment in which he lived. It was dark, dry, and dark. There was a wooden barrel for excretion, which was still stained with the residue of the previous resident, and had no lid. There was a hardwood bedboard that was so tight that it made his butt crack, and he had a clear night's sleep on it. There was also a wooden plate that looked like a dog bowl, with half a piece of black bread on it. Could you at least give me some water? I was just exploring a cave. How could I be caught by a stranger? As soon as I came out, barbarians, robbers, thugs. With grief and indignation pouring out of his chest, Natividad loudly told of his grievances. I'm not a spy. Hearing the spy accusing him of not being a spy, the expressionless Black Iron Guard soldier turned around and left without paying attention to the other party. Before the man could roar a second time, an unpleasant chuckle came from the side. Natividad turned his head sharply and patted the wooden fence hard. What the hell are you laughing at? On the other side of the wooden fence was a down-and-out man with untidy beard and tattered tribal clothes. With the light from the fire outside the wooden fence, Natividad could see the sympathy on the man's face. I'm laughing at a ridiculous person. Natividad clenched his fists just by hearing the awkward tribal language from the other person's mouth, not to mention that the other person was mocking him. Kulsala people, come here. Although he was laughing, the man shook his head. I won't go over. Natividad raised his voice by 3 registers again. Are you coming over? Shut up. New here, do you want to die? Faced with the dungeon guard's pale and powerless bad words, Natividad had to choose to bear the humiliation and bowed to the dungeon guard, who was fierce on the outside but weak on the inside, with an apologetic look. After the guard left, Natividad turned his head to look at the young man who mocked him, but found that the sympathy on the other's face had disappeared and turned into sarcasm. Don't think about it. This is the dungeon of the Emerald Territory. Do you still want to leave after being captured? I'm not a spy. Why do the Narksons capture me? You are not a spy. Why do the Narksons capture you? Natividad was stunned. Isn't this what he said? Why did the man in front of him ask himself back? Is he a fool? Then are you a spy? Why did the Narksons capture you? Yes, I'm a spy. The man smiled at Natividad and pointed at himself. Bolam people, I can hear that you are on the other side of the mountain. For the sake of sympathy, remember, Bolam people, if you want to get out, you must admit that you are a spy and then work for the Emerald Territory, because they capture you not because you are a spy, but because they need you to be a spy. After a long silence, Natividad's voice came faintly. Where is Emerald Territory? The Narkson Black Iron Guards quickly found the cave where the foreigner came out. Faced with the intricate and unmarked road conditions in the cave, Margaret first confirmed that there was no trace of the red-skinned demon rat in the cave, and then withdrew with the soldiers. Instead of spending extra energy and time to find the way in the cave, why not ask the foreigner who came out of the cave? The reason is simple, and Margaret came to the dungeon. Lord Margaret, I'm willing to serve Emerald Territory. General, let me go. I know I was wrong. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Die. All dead. All must die. You devil. I will eat you. I'm willing to be the general's dog. Hi 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 hi. There are dozens of people of different forms imprisoned in the dungeon. In addition to the real criminals of Emerald Territory, there are traitors involved in confidentiality and security of Emerald Territory. Of course, there are also some inexplicably unlucky guys. For example, a foreigner who came out of the shimmering Silver Mountains. Ignoring the prisoner's struggles, Margaret came to the detention cell. The treatment of prisoners in the detention cell is much better than that of prisoners in other places. At least the supply of black bread can be satisfied, but drinking water will be strictly controlled, so the consumption of black bread will be reduced. Sweeping Garfield's dejected face, Margaret pointed at Natividad, who had just been imprisoned. A soldier opened the cell door and escorted the man out. Natividad obediently came to the interrogation room without any struggle along the way. Tied to a stone chair that had been fixed for a long time, Natividad looked at the expressionless cold woman in front of him. She was wearing an elegant and beautiful bright silver dragon patterned plate armor, with an Arxon broad-bladed fine steel longsword on her waist, and the crimson cloak behind her fell on the heels of her iron boots. She looked heroic and imposing. It was a pity that she had a beautiful face. The person in front of her didn't have any femininity at all, and was far from the big girl in the mountains, who only wore a fur coat. Foreigner, you only have one chance to explain why you are in the military restricted area of the Shine Silver Mountains. Margaret didn't care that the man in front of her was looking at her. Her voice was flat and without any ups and downs. Sir, I don't know where the Shine Silver Mountains you are talking about are. I come from the other side of Yangyang Mountain. Natividad was not going to stay here forever, and he couldn't find any reason to lie. My name is Natividad, from Borum. I brought enough food and torches and started exploring along a remote cave entrance in Yangyang Mountain, trying to find the end of the cave. This situation lasted for half a month. I finally found the end, passed through the winding Yangyang Mountain, and came to the other side of Yangyang Mountain. Before I had time to be happy, I was captured by you. Yangyang Mountain is the Shine Silver Mountains. Margaret drew out her broad-bladed longsword and slashed at Natividad. Natividad didn't know why the woman's face suddenly changed, closed her eyes, and began to scream. Don't scream, Natividad. I'm just helping you untie the rope. Now there's something you need to do. You'll be free after you finish it. What do you want me to do? Looking at Natividad's frightened eyes, Margaret's grey eyes were chilling. Take us on the same path you walked. It was not until this moment that Natividad, with his eyes wide open, realized what consequences his words would bring. On the high platform at the Demacia training ground, Oren looked at dozens of young people and legionnaires who were participating in the Steel Swordsman selection, and said with emotion to Jarvandark next to him, I believe that in this world, no weapons or armor can compare to the equipment made of Demacia steel. After the establishment of the Steel Swordsman Legion, Demacia will have the most powerful army in Valoran. We no longer need to fear those warlocks who master terrible magic. Even Narxis will not be our opponent. Therefore, the establishment ceremony and selection ceremony of the Steel Swordsman Legion is still necessary. Otherwise I will not collect the equipment made of Demacia steel from the soldiers. At least let them understand what it means when they put on that equipment. Thanks to Bookfriend, Mojingling, for the reward. Thanks to Joshua's 12,138. Zixi, Momophon is coming again. The bird is late to go to the dark. How do you type it? Dejingwen class leader, pet instructor, ZZ_. Several Bookfriends monthly ticket support. Thank you for the recommendation votes and encouragement from the big Bookfriends. Every time I enter everyone's name, I can jump up anxiously at those who haven't invested yet. Please click 140,000 words. Just reading the catalog is enough for 10 minutes. Good children need careful care to thrive. Chapter 67 Weeping Cloud. Jarvandark, who was standing next to Oren, was looking at a sturdy and resolute boy in the queue with a smile. Oren, look at that boy. He is Kraken from the Hilda tribe in Mithril village. Someone recommended him to me a long time ago. I heard from others that Kraken Hilda is born with supernatural power and is diligent in training. He is a good candidate for joining the army. You can pay extra attention to him. No matter what, he will be promoted faster in the end. After all, He is a member of the Hilda family. Oren nodded and looked at the good candidate mentioned by Jarvan with a calm face. Although he was not interested in the behind-the-scenes deal, Oren had no reason to object. Without the support of the local snakes, Demacia would not have been established so smoothly. It seems that the Hilda tribe has not forgotten its promise. Galista directly sent his most beloved only son. Unaware that he had become a symbol with strong political implications in the eyes of the two big men, Kraken only knew that he was about to participate in the selection ceremony of the most outstanding legion in Demacia, the Steel Swordsman Legion. Only the soldiers of the Steel Swordsman Corps have the right to use Demacia steel, and Demacia steel equipment has proven its supreme status far superior to fine steel equipment. As the most outstanding young generation of the Hilda tribe, Kraken has proven his value in the tribe, and now is a precious opportunity for the Hilda family to truly become the upper class of Demacia. Interests cannot always guarantee one's status, only rights can. This is the last sentence his father, Garalist, said to him before he walked down the Urus Mountains. What he has to do is to obtain the rights of Demacia and make his family stronger. Everyone, silence. The scarred old soldier standing in front of everyone had a loud voice and sharp eyes. His battle-hardened momentum made even the elite soldiers of the original legion have to restrain their arrogance and subconsciously straighten their chests. I'm your selection training officer, Invertibus. This selection will be divided into two parts. The scarred old soldier, with saliva flying, stared at every young person participating in the selection with a terrible look like a dead enemy, as if this group of young people had just taken the turn of his long-dead old father. I will be in charge of the comprehensive combat training. Lord Jarvan will be in charge of the honor assessment. Do you understand? I understand. Speak louder. If you can't hear me, then I can't hear you. I understand. You are so quiet, and you still want to use a steel sword? The young people who participated in the selection were also angry, after being messed up by the old man again and again. I understand. Good. Very energetic. A soldier put the 10 lead heavy swords that had been prepared long ago at the front of the queue, and the scarred veteran Inguidibus showed a cruel smile. The first training. Heavy sword swinging. Those who can complete 30 qualified slashes will pass the assessment, and the rest will be eliminated. First row, start. Kraken's face was solemn, and he stared at his colleagues in the first row who participated in the assessment. The edgeless lead heavy sword was about 1.5 meters long, about 2 fingers wider than the ordinary Demacia fine steel long sword. The heavy sound of breaking through the air alone was enough to show that its weight was definitely not something that ordinary people could bear. Some members of the assessment lost their strength after more than a dozen attempts, and their lead heavy swords flew out of their hands and fell heavily to the ground, making them disqualified. Some people tried to save their strength, but because their slashes did not meet the requirements, they failed faster because of their unbalanced mentality. Some people swore on their faces and tried their best to successfully complete the requirements, but the arms that could no longer be raised had already told the cruel truth. This was the first assessment. Speculators, those with poor strength, and those who used brute force were directly eliminated. If you want to pass, you must have hard strength. Is this the selection of the Steel Swordsman Corps? Soon it was Kraken's turn. Holding the lead heavy sword, the boy seemed to be back in the Urus Mountains. Dragons and birds were flying, and clouds and mists were lingering. A boy waved the heavy wooden sword in his hand over and over again, and the number of times increased. The wooden sword became wider and heavier, and the figure that was getting closer and closer to him suddenly disappeared. With an angry shout, the boy's edgeless heavy sword cut through the air and split all obstacles. In front of her, there seemed to be a familiar shadow blocking her way. Outside the Mithril village, Nalia stared at the empty cliff, took out a piece of bread from her leather bag with some disappointment, tore off a piece, and put it in her mouth. The bread was so bitter, it was obviously sweetened. The girl walked to the empty cliff, sat in the place she was most familiar with, and raised her head. At this moment, a white cloud floated melodiously above the sky, close at hand, but far away. Habits that are formed unconsciously will always bring unspeakable loss, after being suddenly broken. The girl thought so. She felt the fluctuation of emotions, and she tasted the loss. A breeze blew by, as if bringing the body temperature of that person. A white bird landed on the edge of the cliff, tilted its head curiously, and looked at the girl, the bread in her hand. The girl smiled, tore off a little bit of bread, and threw it in front of her. After flapping its wings twice, the bird approached the girl, and began to peck at its trophy. Staring at the white bird eating the bread, Neriah smiled. Brother Creighton, actually I have never told you that my mother is a mage. I'm the daughter of a mage, and the daughter of a mage is also a mage. The white bird quickly opened and closed its yellow beak and shook its head, as if it was really listening to the girl's voice. The white clouds were still floating and unattainable. You are the prince of the Hilda tribe, and I'm a beggar who followed my father to wander to Demacia. My mother left us, and has been missing ever since. My father was taken in by Lord Garalist in the Mithril village, and only then did we have hope of survival. After eating the bread, the bird tilted its head, and asked the girl for food. Haha, Brother Creighton, you are still so greedy. The girl tore off a small piece of bread again, and threw it out, flapping her wings happily, and the bird shook its head and ate it. Demacia is a beautiful place. The forbidden magic stone forest is white, just like your color. White is the color of purity. White should not be desecrated or polluted. My magic is black. Cuckoo. In response to the girl's words, the white-tailed bird once again took small steps closer to the girl, as if trying to attract the attention of the beautiful girl. Unfortunately, the girl's mind was soon placed somewhere else again. Lord Garalister will not take in a refugee of unknown origin, so Lord Garalister knows everything. Cuckoo. The white cloud had turned into a ball of soft cotton without knowing when. In the hazy world, the girl threw out a small piece of bread again. This time she threw it far away, causing the white bird to run a few more steps in dissatisfaction. She was afraid that the big piece of bread would get stuck in the bird's throat, so she carefully tore it into small pieces. However, she could no longer see anything. The sky, without knowing when, began to rain. The girl understood that it was the clouds crying. Tightening her dry linen robe, the girl lowered her head. Demacia is a place where mages are not welcome. Thanks to HHHHHHHHHHHC for the 500-point reward, and thanks to for the 100-point reward. This book is so niche, the number of favorites can't increase. The writing is not good. There are many plot loopholes. It is slow to warm up, and can't catch up with the popularity of the league. Except for a group of enthusiastic, cute, handsome, beautiful, slender, and wealthy book friends, this book has nothing. Can it really reach an average of 500 when it is put on the shelves next year? There should be no female readers, right? Doge, do you like to watch the protagonist slowly farm, slowly lead the emerald territory to grow, and appreciate the history of Runeterra with a slow burning plot, or relying on Hangai to fill in the non-existent background and historical context of the Alliance in his mind, and he has to be half bald just to name the name? Or do you like the protagonist to become a part of the League story and participate in major events in the blink of an eye 10 or 20 years later? I don't mean anything else. I just ask casually. Chapter 68 Narxus becomes a warband. Emerald Territory, outer courtyard of the Lord's mansion. Sitting cross-legged on the fur mat, Lester tried to guide the ice blue light spots gathered around him. With the help of the big snowflake, the blue light spots began to become orderly from disorder. Lester tried to fill the blue light spots into the Arraydisk in his mind, and the blue light spots also began to have the prototype of the Arraydisk in regular motion. It was the simplest shaping, element transformation, magic Arraydisk, only the size of a palm. In Meredith's words, the little guy could only make a small ice cube, provided that he could communicate with the ice magic element, and perception was not a problem for Lester. Miss Howe and Hina stared at the blue light emanating from the palm of Lester's right hand, and a chill rushed towards them, causing the two little guys to quickly cover their mouths, to avoid disturbing Lester who was casting a spell. The blue halo became larger and larger, and suddenly disappeared when it reached a certain critical point. A beautiful diamond-shaped blue ice cube appeared in Lester's hand, which was cool and beautiful. For Lester, he just filled the conceptual array of condensed form plus materialization with ice magic element, and then naturally conceived the diamond that he was most familiar with in his previous life, and finally got such a result. In general, magic is quite fun. Opening his eyes and looking at the eager eyes of the Angel sisters, Lester suddenly realized that he seemed to have not considered it carefully enough. Then he saw Ms. Meredith, who was looking at him from behind the sisters. "Thank you, Ms. Meredith. Your existence has solved another big problem of mine." Standing up, Lester walked towards Meredith and the disappointed eyes of the two little girls and handed over the blue diamond-shaped ice cube. "I think this is the best reward I can do, Ms. Meredith. You are a qualified magic teacher." Meredith took the ice cube with some surprise and felt flattered. But when she thought about it and glanced at the two little girls who were looking at her with dissatisfaction, she understood why this beautiful ice diamond jumped 2 squares and came directly to her hand. As expected of the wise Lord Lester, it was no wonder that Lady Rose was so fascinated by the man in front of her. She traveled thousands of miles in a carriage to offer herself, and she did not look like a big shot at all. "Lord Lester, I just said something that all magicians know. I did not do anything for you. The fact that you can release such a perfect shaping spell so quickly is entirely due to your own excellent talent. Using magic to isolate the heat and keep the beautiful ice drill frozen." Meredith decided to go back and make a permanent magic low temperature crystal box. Before Lester could speak, Meredith spoke first. "Since you have completed the learning of the shaping spell, let's stop here today. I have something else to do, so I'll leave first." "Mary." Before he could say anything, the impetuous female magician left quickly, and Lester could not help but sigh. Sure enough, the next moment, the two girls surrounded him. "Brother Lester, can you turn me into a nice ice stone?" Zinna grabbed Lester's right hand and shook it, acting like a spoiled child to the man. "Give it to your sister, I don't want it." Miss Hastert aside with her arms around her chest, warning Lester with her eyes, as if she knew what to do. Immortal Fortress Conference Hall. After more than 10 days of fruitless wrangling, Nadaz, who received Rose's support and advice, issued an ultimatum. All tribes that join Narxus can form tribal warbands on their own, but the warbands must accept the direct command of the Narxan High Command. Those who disobey orders will be treated as deserters. In addition, all tribes will be disbanded, and the names of all tribes will be abolished. They will all call themselves Narxans, and only the title of the warband will be retained. The residents of the main tribes must be interspersed and settled in different residential areas of the Immortal Fortress for integration and intermarriage. They are not allowed to gather privately, and can only gather in the form of warbands during battles. After applying, other tribes can establish villages and settlements outside the Immortal Fortress on their own. The warband can increase its influence and expand its scale by winning military merits and heads on the battlefield. After having enough influence, the warband can apply to the High Command for the position of general. The general will serve in the Supreme Command. With the help of the Deputy Legion Commander arranged by the High Command, he can establish a regular Narxan Legion on his own, but he needs to solve all logistics and expenses by himself, and the High Command will only provide limited support. After the warband or legion led by the general of the legion conquered new territory, the Supreme Command would reward them according to their merits. Those who made great contributions could obtain the right to operate the land. Unlike the unique autonomous Emerald Territory, the Pioneer General only had the right to command the Legion, and must obey the arrangements of the Supreme Command in administrative management, but he had the right to recommend talents. Those who refuse the above covenant, and refuse to join the Narxan tribe would all be slaves of Narxus, contributing to the construction of Narxus, farming and mining. The firm rules were written on the complete first scroll, and the tribes that had not yet joined Narxus understood that they had lost the right to bargain. No one wanted to be a slave, and military merits were within reach in the distance, so the tribal leaders reached a perfect harmony, and they were as close as family members, forgetting the tribal poison in their leather pockets. The scroll of the Narxan Warband Code was framed and placed in the valuables room of the fortress hall, and was sealed tightly. All the internal factors of disunity were wiped out, and the Narxans present smiled, deepening their sense of belonging to Narxus, and identifying with this newly established country. We will hold a grand celebration, to announce to the whole continent, that the great Narxus is about to rise. Clapping their hands happily, Nadals and Stend looked at each other, and shouted in a loud voice. We will make Narxus a great country, that all races fear. This month will be used to prepare for the celebration. thick meat, sweet bread, delicious beer, fresh fruits and vegetables, beautiful dancers. After a month, we will open the door and invite all Narxans from nearby villages and welcome all foreigners to Naxos. We will take out everything we can to let the great Narxan people understand how great the country they live in is. Stender responded loudly, his eyebrows flying. From now on, there will be no more tribes in Naxos, no more barbarians in Naxos. We are all Narxans, all are equal. Everything is determined by strength. Seniority is determined by military merit. As long as you have strength, as long as you recognize the founding ideals of Naxos, as long as you are willing to sacrifice for Naxos, anyone can join the big family of Naxos. Become one of us. Long live Naxos. Some tribal elders began to cheer, and everyone's face was more jubilant. Stender seemed to have thought of something, and suddenly turned to look at Rose. Ms. Rose, I think our Emerald Lord, Lord Lester, who turned the tide in the founding war of Naxos, should not be absent from such a celebration. I wonder if you can send someone to inform Lord Lester? Nadals also nodded. Yes, the Emerald Territory is also the territory of Naxos. As the first Lord of Naxos, Lord Lester should indeed attend the celebration with a distinguished status. Don't worry, I will definitely convey my message. Rose smiled gracefully and turned away. Thank you all. Daily vote request. Rush into the new book list again. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, The Sword Granting Ceremony of the Steel Swordsman Corps. Swinging heavy swords, long distance running with weights, short distance sprints, combat sparring. Participate in open selection during the day, and sleep in separate beds with comrades in the barracks at night. The comprehensive combat training selection lasted for 5 days. At dusk on the 5th day, the exhausted candidates finally ended the first selection under the order of Veteran Ingwidabis. There were fewer and fewer people around Kraken, and in the end, there were only 16 people left in front of the selection officer veteran. The other 74 were all eliminated and retained in the 1st Legion of Demacia. The overly harsh selection conditions shocked all Dematians, and also gave them a new understanding of the combat effectiveness of the Steel Swordsman Legion and the supreme honor they shouldered. On the 6th day, the 16 soldiers who stood out were taken to talk by Garvandark, and the awarding of medals to the Steel Swordsman Legion was rehearsed countless times. On the 7th day, on the training ground open to the people of Demacia, hundreds of Dematians quietly watched the 16 most powerful soldiers in Demacia's history behind the Legion soldiers, witnessing the birth of Demacia's strongest legion. The scarred old soldier who made people's teeth itch had disappeared. The one who appeared in front of the 16 people was the highest governor of Demacia, Jarvandark. You are the best soldiers in Demacia, the elite among the elites. Jarvandark's voice was full of majesty as he slowly moved between the soldiers who stood in 2 rows with their chests and heads held high. There are a total of 523 people in the 1st Legion of Demacia, including logistics and training militia. There are 64 people who participated in the selection of the Steel Swordsman Legion through internal nominations, and 28 people who participated in the selection of the Steel Swordsman Legion through external nominations. A total of 92 people participated in the selection. The somewhat nervous Kraken held his breath slightly, and felt Jarvandark, who had the highest power in Demacia, walking behind him, and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. 92 are the best among the 523 Demacia warriors, and you are the stronger among the 92, the stronger among the strong. You are the pillars of Demacia. Staring at the tall man with the corner of their eyes, the soldiers present had a fire in their chests. The suffering and hardship they had suffered seemed to have completely disappeared at this moment. The Demacia Steel Swordsman Corps will become the pride of the Dematians, the sharpest swords and the strongest shields in Demacia. Tell me loudly. Do you have the confidence to defend the glory of Demacia with your lives? Demacia. All of us are united. Demacia. Justice will prevail. Good. Returning to the front of the crowd, Jarvandark raised the scepter in his hand high as the 16 people swore. Give the sword. According to the long-arranged process, the 16 people knelt on one knee, straightened their backs and looked forward. A Legion soldier held a gorgeous and beautiful Demacia mithril sword in his hands, and placed it in the hands of 16 people. The mithril sword was held up solemnly by powerful hands. Swords. In the majestic voice of Jarvandal, 16 people stood up with steel swords in their hands, clenched their hands, stretched their arms, and held the steel sword straight in the middle of their chests, looking straight ahead with a resolute gaze. Give armor. The mithril-studded iron leather armor with blue cloaks was directly worn by the Legion's decorated soldiers in front and behind. Jarvandal looked at the not-so-beautiful mithril-studded iron leather armor and frowned. Raise armor. The 16 soldiers took a step forward, put their swords in front of their right chests with both hands, and stood still quickly. The 16 dark blue cloaks fluttered wantonly, awe-inspiring and majestic. Swear. Brave and fearless. Never retreat until death. The steel sword will not break. Glory to the strong city. The army is successful. Oh 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 oh. The people of Demacia began to cheer and began to pour out their joy. Surrounded by hundreds of people's eager eyes, Kraken stared at the steel sword on his right chest. On the cold sword blade, he saw a pretty face as gentle as the first snow. At this time, was she looking at him? Emerald Territory, the simple underground headquarters of the Nightblade Killer. Because there happened to be granite veins underground, the excavation and construction work of the construction masons was much easier. At Lester's suggestion, a dozen construction masons simply settled down underground and commanded more than 30 Emerald Territory people to dig and expand the bunker every day. Although the speed was slow, there was progress every day, which was much better than the Lord's castle. The roughly mined granite stones were carefully polished and cut into pieces of granite bricks, which made the dark underground space more clean and tidy. At least it was no longer the cave dwellers at the beginning. The extra stones and soil were also stored in the warehouse near the Lord's mansion as backup building materials for the construction of the Lord's castle later. After arranging several Nightblade assassins to continue to escort the logging camp in the quiet forest, Morris returned to the dark underground again and moved into his new room. The room that was not yet completed before he left last time was now complete. There were black iron hoops on the granite bricks, and under the hoops were ashtrays to receive the burnt ash and dripping grease. Bright torches were inserted into the hoops, illuminating the dark room and dispelling the darkness. There were 2 vents on the ceiling, which were connected to the surface after a complex channel change system, supplying a steady stream of fresh air to the underground. The room was not big, nor was it small. At least in Morris's opinion, a single room could fit a single bed, a lockable cabinet, a table and a chair. There was no point in having more. Lying on the wooden bed with a cotton pad, Morris stared at the bright ceiling, in a daze. Dong dong dong, are you there? Come in. He sat up from the bed, and the wooden door with iron sheets had been opened, and a smiling face walked in. He still couldn't change, but he didn't need to change. Something? Yes. The handsome face was ruined by the weird expression. The smiling man didn't hesitate to sit on the wooden chair and crossed his legs on Morris's table. Morris frowned, looking for something. Something. Hector took out a small wooden box from his arms, pinched a handful of brown grass leaves, and threw them into his mouth, squinting his eyes and chewing them carefully, with a look of enjoyment on his face. Morris knew that the brown grass leaves were a slightly poisonous plant unique to the quiet forest. It had an anesthetic effect and was called moonwhite. It was addictive. Hector, who was covered with wounds and had a piece of skin peeled off his chest by the cat demon, came out of the quiet forest and started chewing the leaves of moonwhite. I heard that the master is looking for you. Morris didn't bother to look at Hector anymore. He lay back on the bed and closed his eyes. Yes. Feeling the comfort coming from his brain, Hector shuddered and a bloodthirsty light flashed in his eyes. Are you going? Yes. After getting a positive answer, Hector put his legs down from the table and walked to the bed. His fingers began to tremble. I'm going. You're there. When? Wait. Opening his eyes and staring at the devil-like face in the firelight, Morris's mouth curled up and his facial muscles began to twist. Wait. Some readers responded that they felt bored when seeing unfamiliar characters, and they didn't understand the significance of writing about these characters. I think it's my fault. My writing skills are not up to par, not interesting enough, and I didn't explain it clearly. I apologize to everyone first. My ability is limited, and I'm working hard to learn and improve. I will introduce the general background and origins of these characters and the character details later. If you don't understand, you can go and read the character introduction so that everyone can have some clues. I hope you don't think I'm troublesome. Let me explain briefly. A million-word novel that wants to support the world of the League of Legends universe cannot write about familiar League characters all day long. The heroes in the League of Legends game are just high-ranking heroic symbols, not mortals who deal with daily necessities. What I do is to turn heroes from a few lines and 4 skills into flesh and blood mortals. The Runeterra I write about is the Runeterra of everyone, not the Runeterra of heroes. I write stories, the rune world in the background of the League, not stories about one or a few heroes. Naturally, there will be many original characters to support this world and show everyone a real Runeterra. Those who want to read the hero's story can go to the official website of the League. It's very easy to find. It's really not easy to create an original character. It has to fit the background, reflect a certain social characteristic, and be connected to the future world. Please understand. I write about Poppy every day, and I can't show the attitudes of the various classes in Demacia towards magicians and their concepts of marriage. I can't describe how the Steel Swordsman Legion, the predecessor of the Fearless Vanguard, was established, and I can't explain how the Light Mage Lux from the Crownguard family came from. Chapter 70 The Old Father's Anger. Walking on the country road, listening to the sounds of nature, the man dressed in a well-fitting thin cotton long coat strolled along the ridge of the field. Lord Karam, good day. A farmer who was bending over to weed greeted the man with a smile. The man smiled back and stopped beside the farmer. Salak, good day. Lord Karam, does Lord Herald have any plans for today? The farm work here will be done soon. Is there anything we can help with? Wiping the sweat off his face with a sweat towel, Salak seemed very active in front of Inspector Karam, a popular figure under the command of political officer Herald. No one who does farm work in the north would dislike an inspector who has a friendly attitude and helps cover up minor flaws. What's more, the inspector's 2 daughters are likely to become the future wives of the Lord. It's too late to curry favor with him, so how can you dare to offend him? Yes, there is. A new mine has been opened in the north. There are not enough miners. Unfortunately, many people cannot do the mining work. Otherwise, we would recruit a group of miners. After receiving the long-awaited respect, Kiram also got rid of the shadow of the past and began to become confident. The man's appearance was not bad. After living in the Emerald Territory, Kiram had time to sort out his image and became much more mature. He began to grow a beard and looked mature and steady. Among the people of the Emerald Territory, he had many more suitors. Unfortunately, for some reason, the man did not accept any of the courtship. My lord, you are joking. Isn't it just waving a mining pick at a big rock? Can't you do it just by being strong? Salak deliberately made a naughty face and bulged his strong arms and muscles, which made Kiram very amused. Haha, it's not that simple. Patting Salak on the shoulder, Kiram didn't mind saying a few more words. The rules for mining in our Emerald Territory are different from before. Miners need to learn a lot of things. Mineral identification is only the most basic thing. How to safely light, how to detect air, how to transport minerals, how to remember the mine tunnel, how to maintain the supporting wooden beams of the mine tunnel. Many things have very complicated rules. If you don't understand or remember them, Lord Herald will not let you go into the mine. Hey, it's really complicated. Why is it so troublesome to dig a stone? Hearing a series of things that Zeram had never heard of, Salak's head suddenly became a little big. Scratching his head, he gave up the idea of mining as a side job. That's right, these are all what Lord Herald told me. I also have the obligation to explain it to you. The key is safety. At this point, Zeram's face was a little proud. Nothing will happen when we go into the mine in our Emerald Territory. But I heard that something seems to have happened in the mine in the south. People died and are now being watched by the army. As if he thought of something, Salak lowered his voice. My lord, do you know what happened? Zeram's expression suddenly became serious. Salak, this matter cannot be said carelessly. Don't ask me or ask others, otherwise it will easily cause trouble. Waving his hand, Ziram continued to move forward. Go back and rest early, after finishing your work. Okay, Lord Ziram. Watching Ziram leave, Salik felt much better. Lord Ziram is really nice. The man inspected the farmland in the morning and discussed farming with the farmers. In the afternoon, he inspected the orchard and picked a few unripe fruits to eat. Near dusk, he returned to the agricultural warehouse and met Harold, the political officer, who was explaining things. Ziram, you should go back early today and clean yourself up at home. Lord Lester wants to see you and should invite you to dine at the Lord's mansion in the evening. Lord Harold, don't you need my help here? Looking at Harold with a smile on his face, Ziram, who was flattered, was a little uncomfortable going back so early. Anyway, I can't see my daughters if I go back now, and I don't have anything to pack. I can just go directly to the Lord's place when the time comes, and I don't have to take a detour. No, Lord Lester will send someone to your house to pick you up. You should go back quickly. I guess he wants to tell you something important. Remember to seize the opportunity. After leaving the warehouse, although Kiram was a little confused, he guessed that it must be related to his daughters. However, after thinking of this, the man's face changed slightly. Could it be? No, the daughters are still too young. Even if the Lord likes them, it is absolutely not allowed. I have to stop this. Quickening his pace, Kiram disappeared into the night. The Lord's mansion tonight was different from the past. GC and Tally had dinner early and went upstairs. Instead, Lester cooked a table of sumptuous meals himself, which made the two little girls in beautiful flower dresses look forward to it, and their appetites were excited. Your father will be here soon, Miss Hap. Be patient. The oil lamp on the table and the fire in the fireplace illuminated the spacious first floor, adding a warm atmosphere. Hearing what Lester said, the blonde girl wiped her saliva and turned her head slightly to avoid Lester's funny sight. I don't want to eat. On the other side, Hina took advantage of her sister's turning her head to get down from her high chair, climbed onto Lester's thighs and sat upright, without saying a word, with a silly smile on her face, looking happy and satisfied. After hesitating for a while, Lester wanted to hug the clingy girl down, but after seeing the girl's happy expression, he couldn't bear to destroy the girl's simple happiness, so he had to give up for the time being. When Miss Ha turned her head back, the overall situation was decided. Hina had occupied the entire country and sat firmly on the deity. The blonde girl widened her eyes, and the black-haired girl made a naughty face, sticking out her pink tongue at her sister, actively provoking her. Hina, gnashing her teeth and looking at her sister who didn't follow martial ethics, Miss Ha jumped off the chair, came to Lester, and started to pull her sister. Hina stuck out her tongue and swayed, swaying, refusing to come down. The black-haired girl held Lester's waist like an octopus, motionless, as steady as a rock. Come down quickly. I won't. Lol. Hina also felt the fun of teasing her sister, laughing and showing her little tiger teeth. Sister, don't you dislike brother Lester? Why are you in such a hurry? Little brat, do you know what it means to like? Sister is also a little brat. Lol. Finding that she couldn't pull it, and Lester didn't take the initiative to help her, the proud Miss Ha felt that she was being ignored and stepped back half a step, feeling a little unhappy. I don't care. Finally, Lester began to play the role of a stabilizer. Hina, good things should be shared with sisters, not monopolized. Well, I listened to brother Lester. After repositioning his sister on his right thigh, Lester picked up his sister and put the sister who didn't resist on the left. Miss Ha pursed her lips, just hugged Lester's left arm, and said nothing. Lester knew that Miss Ha was a little angry. Don't be angry, Miss Ha. Sisters should not quarrel. Zina, apologize to your sister. Oh sister, I'm sorry. Just as Lester was trying to reconcile the relationship between the sisters, the door was suddenly pushed open, and a man with a rusty dagger on his waist appeared. The man widened his eyes and looked at his two lovely daughters sitting obediently on the other man's thighs, one on the left and one on the right, and they were equally treated. Then, the man, who was hot-headed, drew the rusty sword at his waist and let out a father's angry roar in the stunned expression of the other man. You bastard. What are you going to do to my daughters? Those who like Mishap will deduct 1, those who like Zina will deduct 2, and those who like Hangai will deduct 3. Those who deduct 3 should prepare their own fencing sets, and those who deduct 1 and 2 should take the initiative to file for leniency. Then, here comes the point. I plan to make a sprint for the collection and achievements in the last 10 days of this month, and see how much everyone is looking forward to this book. Counting the monthly tickets given for meeting the daily update word count and the monthly tickets sent by everyone, the monthly tickets are now 176. The number of monthly tickets will be counted at 9 PM on the 31st of the month, and the number of monthly tickets will be divided by 50. The integer will be taken, and the number of updates will be based on the number of days after the book is put on the shelves. For example, if 251 votes are counted, then after the book is put on the shelves, in addition to the 5 chapters that will be updated on the first day, 5 more chapters will be updated on the second day, capped at 500 monthly tickets, and a maximum of 10,000 words will be updated every day for 3 consecutive days. It is estimated that they will not be used. This is regarded as the last wave of Carnival before the book is put on the shelves. The rules for adding more chapters after the book is put on the shelves will be based on large rewards and subscription achievements. If the average 500 goal is reached by the end of January, 5 more chapters will be added, and if the average 1000 goal is reached, 10 more chapters will be added, and so on. Chapter 71 Family Dinner. With the explanation of Mishap and Hina, the misunderstanding between the two men was finally solved, and the Great Lord also avoided the tragic ending of being chopped into tetanus by the rusty sword of the angry old father. Although there were still some grudges in his heart, but knowing that it was his daughter who took the initiative to pester the other party, Kiram still felt a little sour in his heart. No one can be blamed. His daughter is only 6 years old, and she knows how to like men. She is precocious, and is exactly the same as his wife. He also deceived the 8-year-old Misira early. Just thinking of the face that often appeared in his dreams, Kiram tore his face and suppressed his thoughts in an instant. The family dinner finally got on track. Lester was at the main seat, Kiram was at the guest seat, and the 2 little girls sat on both sides. A wizard of the Black Rose appeared and used magic to heat up the slightly cold dishes, and a rich fragrance lingered in the room. Sorry, Lord Lester, I was too impulsive just now. After hesitating for a while, Kiram still expressed his apology to Lester. After all, if the other party did not intend to take advantage of his daughter, mediating the dispute between his daughter was kind, and he also had to express his gratitude, because the 2 girls were really difficult to deal with when they quarreled, and he had experienced it himself. Lester shook his head, but his face was full of guilt. I should apologize, Mr. Ziram. You trusted me, but I'll let you see a bad scene. This is my mistake. You are willing to forgive me for my rudeness, and give me a chance to explain. I'm very grateful. Standing up, walking around the long table, and personally filling the small silver cup for Ziram with the red wine that Rose had collected for many years, Lester expressed his apology with his actions. Mr. Ziram, you are a great father. You are a role model for me to learn from. Please allow me to toast you a glass of wine, Mr. Ziram. Flattered to take the silver wine cup held by Lester with both hands, watching Lester drink it all in one gulp, Ziram's grudge completely disappeared, and he became a little closer to the young lord in his 20s. His handsome face looked even more attractive at this moment, and he liked him more and more. How could such a polite, courageous, and capable young lord want to take advantage of 2 6-year-old girls in such a vulgar way? It is obvious that he can take his time, as long as he raises them normally, so why would he be so impatient? It seems that I have misunderstood. Haha, Lord, you are too much. I'm just an ordinary father who is worried about his daughter. Kiram also stood up and drank the wine in the glass in one gulp, and his face was a little drunk. Please sit down. I'm the junior, and you are the elder. Please don't be too restrained. Please treat this place as your home. After helping Kiram sit down and leaving the silver bottle of red wine, Lester returned to the main seat again and clapped his hands. 4 middle-aged waitresses who had been prepared came down from upstairs, stood behind the 4 people, and began to serve the 4 people. The waitress filled Kiram's glass with wine again. In Kiram's view, He and the Lord did not need to be served. That was to take care of his two shorter daughters. Thinking of Lester's thoughtful consideration, Kiram felt like a spring breeze. He turned around and looked at his two daughters with happy smiles on their faces. He had some thoughts that he had resisted before. Perhaps this Lester is reliable. It's not a bad idea to entrust my daughter to him, but I have to observe it for a while. After 3 rounds of drinks, the atmosphere became lively. I don't know when Lester had moved a chair and sat next to Kiram, hugging Kiram's shoulders. The two shouting little girls directed the middle-aged waitress behind them to fight for delicious food, as if they were fighting a war. The two men clinked their glasses and discussed the development of the Emerald Territory in a familiar and enthusiastic manner. In addition to the food battle, the two little girls saw that their father and Lester got along well, and their eyebrows curved. They felt much more at ease, but after looking at their sisters, the gunpowder smell became strong again. Lord. Mr. Kiram, Lord is too polite. Just call me Lester. Lester hooked Kiram's shoulder, his cheeks slightly drunk, and filled Kiram's glass with wine. Haha, then I will call you Lester. That's right, Mr. Kiram. After drinking it in one gulp, Kiram's head was a little dizzy, but his consciousness was still clear, and it did not affect his thinking. Taking advantage of the alcohol, he still asked the question he had always wanted to understand. Lester, many people have asked me recently what happened in the mine cave of the Shimmering Silver Mountains. I didn't tell them anything. I kept my mouth shut. Hearing Kiram's implication, Lester lowered his voice a little. You are not an outsider, so I will tell you directly. The reason why I blocked the news is that there is some evil thing under the Shimmering Silver Mountains. I'm afraid that it will cause panic to other people if it is spread out. Evil thing. Is there a ghost? Subconsciously thinking of the terrible demons and monsters, Kiram's drunkenness also dissipated a lot. It's a mouse. Kiram let out a long breath and felt relieved. What? What's there to be afraid of rats? Haha. The rats have red skin, are cruel and bloodthirsty, and like to eat people. The tallest rat is as big as Mishap and can use swords and crossbows. Although the number is unknown, there are definitely hundreds of them. Looking at his eldest daughter, who was already more than 1 meter tall and turned into a big rat in proportion, coupled with the words of bloodthirsty and evil, a strange picture was drawn in his mind, and Kiram's smile gradually froze. Then, what should we do? Don't be afraid, I can solve it. Lester took a piece of braised wild boar meat and put it into his mouth, looking at Kiram, who was a little uneasy, and said calmly, the soldiers of Emerald Territory are good enough. We have good equipment, rich combat experience, and the magician of the Black Rose. Those rats can only hide in the cave and dare not come out, and I will lead the soldiers to kill them. That's good. I believe you can do it, Lester. Patting the man on the shoulder, Kiram encouraged Lester in his own way, and Lester smiled slightly. It's a good thing to express closeness to yourself. Actually, I asked you to come here this time, not only to meet and have a meal, but also to ask for your opinion on something. Following Lester's gaze to his two daughters with bulging bellies, Ziram was a little worried and whispered, is it about Miss Hadansina? Lester nodded and said, yes, in 2 days, I will go to the Immortal Fortress east of the Valoran Plain to attend the Noxan Legion celebration as the Lord of the Emerald Territory, an independent territory of Noxus. I want to take the two little guys out for a walk and see more of the world. This will be good for Miss Hadansina. I can't make a decision, so I want to ask for your opinion. Lester's voice was not deliberately lowered, so the two little girls heard it clearly. Although they remained calm on the surface, they secretly pricked up their ears. Hearing that she could go out to see the outside world, Miss Ha's heart was full of anticipation and excitement, while Cinna's face turned red, and she began to imagine the scene of her brother Lester holding her while shopping. Taking his eyes away from his two daughters, Kiram sighed and sipped a mouthful of red wine. They haven't grown up yet, but their elbows have already turned outward. They are not little anymore. It would be good for them to go out and see the world. Thanks to the editor, there will be 2 more recommendations next week, but it's a pity that the word count has been reached, so it has fallen off the new book list. It could have climbed for a few more days. Thanks to A Poor Bat, A Second Dimension Fox, and Squeak. for their monthly ticket support, and thanks to Whose Old Soul Clothes, It's Your Dream, and Jingyu, for their 100-point reward. The book friend who predicted that Kiram would sell his daughter for a meal. Please stand up. Did you peek at my saved manuscripts, Kaku? We are so in tune with each other. Let's join the group and play League together. Shuri McClown, terminally ill brother, Sunny boy. Regarding the monthly ticket sprint, you can save your tickets until the end of the month to see if there is an event to double the monthly tickets. Chapter 72. Nightmare is not a dream, it is despair. Things were settled, and the dinner ended with a great enjoyment for both the host and the guests. Zerum sat in a carriage and was sent back home by the soldiers of the Black Iron Guard with his 2 daughters. Lester gave Zerum a day off so that he could play with his 2 daughters for a day. The next day, Lester came to the war workshop early in the morning and found Crystal. The old blacksmith looked tired, unusually, and took a nap by the stove. Seeing Lester come in, Steiner walked quickly to Lester and whispered, "The teacher just fell asleep. The equipment has been made. Please follow me, Lord." Nodding, Lester followed Steiner through the forging room, bypassed the other rooms, and went straight into the equipment warehouse with the strictest guard. Soldiers with torches were accompanying him to provide lighting. On dozens of wooden weapon racks and armor racks, a number of high-quality equipment gleaming with silver light have been placed, mainly plate armor and narcs and standard long swords. In addition, on a dozen equipment racks made of black stone wood against the wall, hanging are killing weapons shining with dark red luster. Their material is a fusion of mountain copper and fine steel, magic steel. There are 5 sets of lightweight magic steel scale armor suits, Death Dance, designed by you personally. The size is built according to the data you gave. Without affecting the movement, the defense is improved as much as possible. As long as the unarmored parts are not hit, it is enough to block ordinary arrow attacks. The helmet, torso, arm guards and footwear are all available, and there is also a magic steel short spike that can be easily inserted and carried. A magic steel folding stick that can be attached with magic steel short spikes. 4 magic steel throwing knives and a dark blood hand crossbow that can accommodate 3 crossbow arrows. On the other side are 5 sets of heavy magic steel plate armor suits, Blackguard, designed by you, equipped with full covering magic steel high-horned helmets, and integrated magic steel combat boots and leg armor. 4 of them are the general size of ordinary narcs and adult men, and 1 female set is customized according to the size of Lady Margaret. The weapon is a magic steel double-edged beheading greatsword. Considering the weight of the equipment and its sufficient defensive performance, it is not equipped with a shield. It needs to be worn by people with strong bodies. Finally, there are 3 experimental magic steel square shields. After testing, a single point is enough to defend at least 20 crossbow attacks from red-skinned demon rats. If a wizard charges it through magic, the durability of the shield can be increased. Under Steiner's leadership, Lester checked the magic steel equipment one by one. The Dance of Death is a light armor designed for Nightblade killers. It is a tight-fitting, high-collared magic steel leather armor in a battle skirt style that is easy to move. The main color is the pure black of black lizard leather, matched with the unique dark red of magic steel metal, which gives the armor a breathtaking and terrifying momentum. A magic steel folding stick is hung on the waist of the battle skirt, and the dark blood hand crossbow is fixed on the right thigh side through a riveted padlock holster with a pulley installed. It comes with 3 magic steel short crossbow arrows and 5 steel crossbow quivers. For easy access, there is a magic steel throwing knife on each side of the waist and calf. The magic steel short spike is hidden in the right forearm of the magic steel arm guard in the form of a compressed spring. When needed, it can be ejected directly from the back of the hand by opening the padlock to kill the enemy, or it can be taken off and combined with the magic steel folding stick on the waist to form a magic steel spear. The high-horned helmet of the Blackguard can be opened upwards to widen the field of vision. In order to facilitate movement, the heavy plate armor, Blackguard, is modularized, including a full cover high-horned helmet, a neck guard, anti-decapitation, with magic steel plates installed on the chest and back, magic steel shoulder armor, magic steel hand guards, magic steel leg armor, and magic steel boots. The magic steel broad-bladed longsword is 1.5 meters long, double-edged, with a thin neck and a long blade. It has both the unique ferocity of Narcan weapons and the elegance of exquisite crafts. In order to appropriately reduce the weight, two short blood grooves are installed on both sides of the sword blade. The sword body is black and red after quenching. It can be used with the fixed metal scabbard on the side of the neck guard. Except for some minor troubles when pulling it out, it will not affect the soldier's movement after the sword is put away. The last magic steel square shield is a single person large shield that is 180 centimeters high and 1.5 meters wide. It has a special crossbow shooting port to resist the crossbow arrow attack of the red-skinned demon rat. After the inspection, Lester left the war workshop with satisfaction. Soldiers loaded equipment on horse-drawn carriages and transported them to the barracks in batches. It was still early, so Lester decided to go to the bunker of the Nightblade Killer. You two brothers and sisters are good at hiding. The so-called despair is to want to kill yourself and escape from reality in an instant. Those were hideous faces like nightmares, and the voice of the devil echoed in my ears for a long time. The nightmare came again. Screams, cries, men's laughter, women's wailing, and the crackling of fire burning wood. The sight was a doomsday scene. The man raised the axe in a roar and was killed by the sharp blade piercing his chest in the next second. The woman with an empty look had her clothes torn to pieces and quickly lost her breath in the brutal actions of the robbers. She and her husband sacrificed themselves and failed to save the other two people they loved most. The robbers will never be satisfied, and the desire to get out of the cage will never stop. The devil is here, with his claws open. After killing the couple, the robber, who was fair-faced and kind, took out a boy and a girl from under the bed. The boy, who was tied up by the robber, was already scared silly. The robber began to strip the girl's clothes with a grin. The girl began to struggle, and then a big slap was given to her. The slap directly knocked the girl unconscious, and a stream of blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Without struggling, the lamb's clothes were quickly torn clean by the beast. The flawless light was surrounded by darkness, and was swallowed by darkness in the next second. The robbers began their atrocities. The girl was hurt and started crying again, which aroused the interest of the robbers. The boy looked at everything happening in front of him woodenly, dumbly, stupidly, watching the girl open her mouth and say something he couldn't hear clearly. Looking at the girl's completely desperate eyes, the boy was at a loss. "Boy, come here." The boy walked over obediently. The rope was cut, and the boy, who regained his freedom, did not resist at all. When the girl was shaking, a sharp knife dripping with blood was handed to her by the man who spoke. "Take this knife and help the guys." The boy looked at the sharp knife on the ground in fear. He recognized that it was the demon who killed the man. The demon was still dripping with blood. "Be obedient, or I will kill your sister directly." The robber was not worried that the boy would go against his opinion. He threatened in his own way. It was simple, but effective, because he only had one relative left. As if he recalled the way the girl had just spoken to him, the boy picked up the sharp knife stupidly. "Okay." The boy agreed. Without hesitation, he came to the corpse. He was naked and didn't know how to start. "I'm afraid you have no experience. Remember, start peeling from the bottom. Okay. Look at your dead face. It's so damn unlucky. Smile for me. Laugh. Okay. Ha. Ha ha. Ha ha ha." In order to post it normally, I deleted a lot of things. There is the original version, but I don't recommend you to read it. If you feel physically uncomfortable after reading it, it means you are a normal person, because I also felt disgusted when I wrote it. In order to explain why Hector became a pervert, I still wrote the disgusting things from the perspective of the victim, because there are many more disgusting things in reality. They are monsters that eat people without spitting out bones. They are more terrible than robbers, and they weigh on the shoulders of most people. Chapter 73, Preparations for Revenge. Opening his eyes and sitting up from the bed, Hector gritted his teeth to suppress the smile on his face. The corner of his lips was torn and bleeding. Taking out the white anesthetic grass from the box, Hector pinched a handful and put it in his mouth. He chewed it slowly with the smell of blood and let out a long sigh of relief. His brain began to numb, and the nightmare finally went away. With his hands clenched, his joints made a sound, and Hector got off the ground and walked around in a daze, as if he had lost his soul. Dong dong dong, the aimless steps stopped, and Hector's mouth unconsciously grinned and opened the door. Outside the door were Morris and Demist. "My lord is here, follow me." Hector smiled and wiped the cracked corner of his lips. "Okay." Then Morris found Noddles and Deadest again. The 5 of them didn't say much nonsense and walked directly into the bunker hole closest to the ground. "My lord Lester, I brought the people." Lester glanced at the 4 people in front of him and said in a deep voice, "You only have this one chance." The man's voice was cold and ruthless. "After this, I will get everything from you, including your soul. You must serve me for life, and your descendants must also serve the Emerald Territory and my descendants. You must never betray me forever, and live forever in the dark underground, accompanied by killing and death. It's not too late to refuse now. Of course, your order is the meaning of my future life, my master." The delicate-looking Noddles was the first to bend his knees, slowly kneeling on the ground and putting his head on the ground. "Revenge is over. I listen to you." With a blood-stained bandage wrapped around his hand, Demost's words were concise and powerful. Lester looked at the other 2. "Okay." Hector only said one word, and the last person, named Deadest, just nodded silently without saying a word. "In that case, follow me. You will adapt to the new equipment today and set off tomorrow." The 6 people came to the military camp. At this time, the last batch of equipment packed in wooden boxes was also unloaded in the warehouse and placed next to the large shield standing against the wall. Opening the big wooden boxes, Lester found the suit box of the Dance of Death and distributed it to the 5 people, in turn according to their numbers and sizes. "This is the equipment customized according to your body shape. You will wear this when you go out this time. Master, this is really a beautiful thing, like a work of art. I wonder if I can know her name." Northless stroked his own Dance of Death with a dazed look. "This set of light armor is called Dance of Death. It is a magic steel equipment made of mountain copper unique to the Emerald Territory." After briefly explaining the characteristics and additional equipment of the Dance of Death to the 5 people, Lester let the 5 people explore it on their own. "Master, can I call her Hilna?" Hearing the same name as Northless's fiancée, Lester nodded. "How to name it is your own business. You don't need to ask me." "Oh, my Hilna, you are finally back to me again. I will never let you leave me again." Unlike Northless, who kept touching it, Hector just checked the weapons that the Dance of Death brought with him and finally fixed his sight on the 4 magic steel throwing knives. The magic steel throwing knives are top-heavy and light-footed, suitable for spinning and throwing. In Hector's opinion, these 4 thin-bladed throwing knives seem to be more suitable for skinning. Deadest silently took off his black leather armor, put on the death dance, and began to move his body to adapt to the weapon. Studying the exquisite dark blood hand crossbow, Demost quickly became familiar with the method of use and could not help but admire the design of the pulley. The dark blood crossbow has the effect of breaking armor and can be recycled many times. The steel arrows are consumed faster than the dark blood crossbow arrows. They can be thrown away after they cannot be used, but the dark blood crossbow arrows should be recycled as much as possible to avoid the outflow of magic steel, unless it is absolutely necessary. Morris directly removed the magic steel short spike, and after unfolding the magic steel folding stick, he screwed the threaded steel of the short spike handle section onto the hollow gun end of the folding stick, and finally screwed the folded broken end with a metal hoop, and a 1.8 meter metal spear appeared in his hand. This time when you go to the north, you must keep your identity secret and hone your killing skills as much as possible. Robbers, bandits, and all evil people who show hostility towards you will become your prey. There is no need to show any mercy. You can kill the evil and the weak, but you must never kill the innocent. The bottom line I explained to you is the killing rules that must be followed and cannot be violated. Remember, you are Nightblade killers. You must act as a team. You can assassinate or kill openly. As long as you annihilate all the enemies and no one escapes, you will be qualified. After a pause, Lester looked at the people who stopped what they were doing and turned their eyes to him and continued. After killing the enemy, remember to cut off the right ear of the strong enemy. Supervisor Morris, in addition to the revenge operation, everyone needs to kill 3 strong enemies and cut off the right ear of the strong enemy and bring it back. You only have 3 months. If you come back outside the time limit, even if you have completed the revenge, I will not use you again. I don't need incompetent trash. Of course, you can also choose to defect and find a place to live in seclusion. I don't care, but you must be prepared to pay the price. Master, we will never. Don't make a promise to me, Northless. In my opinion, promises and oaths are worthless. Interrupting Northless's words, Lester said coldly, I need to see your actions, not words. Remember, repay me with actions. Yes. If you can cross the shimmering silver mountains from the quiet forest, you can see a seaside village built in the rugged mountains. This village has no name, or it has a name given by the villagers themselves. Trewell, a lonely place. There is a strange visitor living on that mountain. Young Isaiah always heard his mother muttering, which made him, who loved to explore, more curious. Mom, what kind of strange visitor is that? Whenever Isaiah asked this question, the woman with a frosted face would always look strange and say nothing, followed by an overly deliberate and harsh accusation. Isaiah, let your sheep go. Don't ask so many questions. Oh. He left obediently, but Isaiah never gave up the opportunity to explore, and the flock of sheep moved closer and closer to the mountainous area. Habel, watch the sheep, I'll be back soon. Woof woof. The sheepdog barked twice obediently, and followed the head sheep closely. With his mind at ease, Isaiah began to run in the mountains. Children who grew up in the mountains are always accompanied by farmland or pastureland, and running is just the simplest daily life. He climbed over 2 mountains, 3 mountains, but he found nothing. What kind of strange visitor is that? Scratching his head, although he was a little unwilling, Isaiah had to leave. Because some readers of C72 think the plot is too cruel, I will not post the original version on Q. If you want to read it, you can message me privately. Chapter 74 The Gift of the Silver-Winged Dragon Bird. After arranging matters for the Emerald Territory, Lester, Meredith, Miss Had and Cinna sat in a carriage, escorted by a dozen Narcs and Black Iron Guards and Shadow Crossbowmen in fine steel gear, and headed east. 5 other plains horses carrying people followed the carriage far behind, parted ways with the carriage at the second branch of the Black Iron River, and galloped all the way to the north. Sitting in the wooden carriage, Miss Hap, who didn't want to sit down, seemed a little uneasy, always looking left and right, but unfortunately there were thick wooden boards on both sides, without even a window, just like a wooden barrel. Cinna clenched her 2 little hands, frowned, and touched her little, but from time to time, obviously because the carriage without shock absorbers was shaking hard. Seeing the black-haired girl's uncomfortable look, Lester directly held the little girl on his lap and settled her down. Before Miss Hack could frown, the blonde girl was also carried up, one on the right and one on the left. Perfect harmony. Is this the true meaning of Eastern Take-I in the practice posture? Meredith looked at the 2 girls with some envy, then closed her eyes and began to meditate. Brother Lester, where are we now? Cinna finally couldn't help shaking Lester's arm. Miss Had also turned her head. We should have just left the Nokmachi Plain. Pointing to the uncurtained entrance of the wooden carriage, Lester also felt that he should personally design and improve the carriage. After mastering the technology of firing glass with sand crystal, it is not difficult to build a metal frame 4-wheeled glass carriage with shock absorbers. If you can't even enjoy life, there is no point in being a lord. That direction is the east of the Nokmachi Plain. There is a beautiful Black Iron River, and the land under our feet is called the Valoran continent. He touching Cinna's little head. Cinna squinted comfortably and smiled sweetly. Miss Ha has long been accustomed to her sister's cute and naive look. Although she still feels that she can't do it, she also holds Lester's left arm, tilts her head, frowns, and says nothing. Lester also touched Miss Ha's head. He always felt that the antagonism between the 2 sisters seemed to be getting stronger. He obviously wanted the 2 sisters to become close. The angel sisters who mastered the power of the stars were much more powerful than in the game. What is the Immortal Bastion? Miss Ha suddenly asked. The Immortal Bastion is the most important city in Naxos and a great military fortress. Recalling the background story he knew, knowing that Miss Had and Cinna had attracted his attention, Lester said slowly, the Immortal Bastion was built 400 years ago. At that time, there was a great warlord in the north of this land. The name of the warlord was San Uzel. He was a tyrant who believed in the power of darkness and thirsted for blood and skulls. Meredith suddenly opened her eyes and looked at Lester strangely, as if she wanted to say something, but she didn't say it. The Immortal Bastion is the center of the empire built by Urzel. After Urzel's death, the Immortal Bastion is now the capital of Naxos. After hesitating for a while, Lester still did not say Mordekaiser, the real name of Ochen after Urzel's rebirth. If he was noticed by Mordekaiser, it would not be a good thing. No one knows what kind of terrible ability the Ochen language belonging to the dead has. If he is directly dragged to the realm of the dead in some way, he will have nowhere to cry. After all, dragging people into the small dark room is Mordekaiser's specialty. Hearing that Lester did not say Mordekaiser's name, Meredith showed an expression of expectedness, but Lester did not notice it. What is the dark power? What is the use of believing in the dark power? Miss Had asked again, revealing her strong desire for knowledge. Dark power is a general term, generally referring to evil, violation of human nature and morality, or taboo power, which is not recognized or accepted by ordinary people. Lester adjusted Miss Had's crooked little butt, knowing that the little girl was still dissatisfied, so he could only continue to explain. Normally speaking, warriors kill enemies only to compete for resources, which is just a means and process to achieve the goal. Warriors will not do anything extra after achieving the goal, right? Yes. Hina, who was no different from a little adult, answered first. Just like Hina will no longer feel uncomfortable after being picked up by her brother. Miss Hap puffed up her face in anger. Lester wiped the non-existent sweat from his forehead and pretended not to see it. If they are warriors who believe in the power of darkness, then killing the enemy is no longer a process, but the result of deliberate pursuit. They enjoy killing and believe in creating terror. The competition for resources has changed from a purpose to an added value of killing. For them, they will continue to kill, even if they obtain resources. This is a consequence of believing in the power of darkness. They are likely to indulge in the forbidden desires of darkness, turning a normal person into a cruel person. Uzel is such a person. He believes in terror, and killing and sacrifices cruelty to darkness. That's why some people call him a tyrant. Brother Lester, are you better or is Uzel? Yes, Brother Lester, you must be better than Uzel, right? If Uzel bullies Cinna, can Brother Lester save Cinna? Sure enough, these two are still children. They actually ask such questions. Lester touched the little heads of Miss Had and Cinna at the same time, and nodded confidently. Of course I'm the best. No matter who bullies you two, I will save you, even Uzel. Wow, I knew Brother Lester was the best. Cinna found a suitable opportunity to act like a spoiled child again, and huddled in Lester's arms without moving. Miss Had's cheeks were slightly red, and she turned her head away. Who wants you to save them? The iron-bound double-wheeled carriage slowly bumped on the dirt road. The green mountains on both sides of the carriage gradually disappeared. The coachman slowly waved his whip. Behind the carriage were more than 20 soldiers, following at a normal walking speed. Suddenly, a melodious sound came from the sky, and a huge silver-winged dragon bat with a wingspan of 8 meters hovered in the sky, flying over the team, and sprinkled a pale white crystal splash in the sun. Dragon bird. It's the silver-winged dragon bird. Looking at the white sun shower all over the sky, the soldiers' excited and longing expressions froze instantly. The next moment, the sun shower crackled with the unique smell of urine from birds and hit the soldier's armor, crackling and painting wantonly. What's wrong? The driver, who was beaten to a pulp by the excrement, heard the sound behind him and widened his eyes. Before he could speak out to stop it, the man who made the sound was accurately hit by the biological weapon that landed on his head, subconsciously wiping his sticky hair. The man was stunned and looked up. The silver-winged dragon bat seemed to have seen the man who stuck his head out, tilted his head, and made a light coo sound, but in the eyes of everyone, it sounded like a smell of stench. After taking a deep look at the silver-winged dragon bird, Lester gave a big middle finger to the dragon bird that tilted its head to look at him, and returned to the carriage. Woo, it stinks. The two clinging girls covered their noses and quickly moved away. Meredith, on the other hand, stared at Lester, who had just washed his hair, speechlessly. What's wrong with you? Nothing. Lester smiled, wiped it with a cotton towel he carried with him, and threw it outside the car. I just remembered a little guy who was a bitch. Thanks to ZZ_, SimondED41, 201806031733063373 right square bracket left square bracket for their monthly tickets. And thanks to all the book friends for their recommendation tickets. Chapter 75 Treasures from the Ancient Times. Now on sale. $3K for this chapter. Thanks for your support. Since the Rune Wars, the Immortal Bastion has never been as lively as it is now. With an old pace, Tasha leaned on a long-nailed wooden stick and squinted her eyes to enjoy the hustle and bustle of the fortress. The steep battlements of the city gate in the distance were filled with gorgeous flowers, making the cold city gate walls look much more gentle. Many families hung festive red carpets and trophies such as beast skulls and furs at their doors, which not only promoted bravery, but also decorated the lively streets. Groups of children with long braids walked away with laughter, and more pedestrians completely forgot their tribes and integrated into the residents of the immortal bastion of Naxos. Barbarians have become a thing of the past, and now everyone has only one name, that is, Naxans. The previous tribal wandering life has been far away from the Larxi tribe. After settling down, the old man found that he liked his current life more than he thought. War and death are no longer the only thing for him. After losing all his children, he followed that young and handsome adult and had another grandson in an accident, a good grandson who ran around holding a bone bull made of a robber skull. Grandma Tasia. Holding a round white bone bull, the boy ran to Tasia. Good boy, are you alone today? Where are your parents? My dad went to dance the war dance with Aunt Rita. He will definitely not come back to spend the night. After knowing that my dad was dancing, my mom, who was wearing an animal skirt, also found Uncle Moss to learn how to beat the animal skin war drum with her hands. My mom said that she studied very hard and would not go home at night. She asked me to find my dad to play by myself. Humph. I don't want to find my dad. I want to play with grandma. Touching the little head of the little head, Tasia looked at the round head in the little head's arms, and the old woman with a twitch of her mouth pulled the little head's hand. Come on, grandma will take you to some fun places. Okay. The little head happily shook the shiny round bone ball and followed the old woman out of the residential area. Come and have a look. A Shurima ancient ruins pottery jar is only 10 Shurima copper coins. They are all good treasures just excavated from Shurima's ancient tombs and can be used to open the real Shurima royal gems. A brown-haired middle-aged man with one eye blind stood on the side of the small stall on Triumphal Avenue, with more than a dozen integrated patent pottery jars placed at his feet, which looked quite old. The shouting with a southern continent accent quickly attracted a lot of curious people, who stopped in front of the pot stall to become spectators. Grandma, those pots are so strange. They are round, and have big ears, and they look like the sun. Tasia smiled meaningfully. Let's go and take a look. In front of the grandmother and grandson, there were already several interested Naxans standing. Hey, what do you mean by this pot? How dare you sell it for 10 Shurima copper coins? I think this rotten pot is only worth half a copper coin. Seeing the barbarian man in front of him was aggressive, the pot seller was not angry. This is a good thing we brought from Shurima in the south across the ocean. Believe me, warrior, if you can get a burial object with gems and agate, you will be rich. Buy the jar and open it. No matter what it is, it belongs to you. Of course, it may be something that is not worth much. In short, no matter how valuable it is, I will not return it. Hey, I don't have the Shurima copper coins you mentioned. Can I exchange it with you for a chicken leg? Or I will sleep with you again. A rough Naxan woman with disheveled hair took a big step and stretched out a big chicken leg. The corner of the mouth of the jar seller twitched, and he was also a little speechless. Sorry, the transaction only accepts Shurima coins, not barter. Sister, I will not sell my body. If you want to insult me with your body, you still don't have to think about it. I cut off my lower body a long time ago, so I can't do it. The corner of the woman's mouth twitched, and she looked at the one-eyed man again. You are such a cruel man. Okay, I won't make it hard on you. If chicken legs don't work, I'll give you a live chicken. I'll make a cage for you to put the live chicken in, so you can take it away easily. Sister, I'm sorry, I really can't do that. We are a small business. It's very dangerous to go to Shurima to discover ancient ruins. I really can't bring a live chicken back to Shurima. On the ship, those greedy people will turn it into chicken bones. Outside the crowd, the little boy held the old woman's hand, a little curious. Grandma, what is Shurima? Is Shurima rich? Touching the little boy's head lovingly, Tasia looked up at the sun, with a little more nostalgia in her turbid eyes. This is also the story my grandma told me. Shurima was once a great empire built on the desert. That empire had the most powerful angel warriors. Those angel warriors had great power, and could go up to the sky, and down to the sea. They were gods who came down from the sun, and had the power of the sun. Some people also called them god warriors. That was a long time ago. It's so long ago that many people on the Valoran continent have forgotten how long it has been since the Shurima Empire. When Shurima was still the center of the world, the angel warriors were invincible and invincible. The invincible warriors made Shurima the only ruler of that land. The powerful and rich Shurima Empire printed countless coins. Nowadays, the metal coins popular in the entire southern continent and even the northern continent are all from the Shurima Empire. Among them, the large gold coins printed with the human faces of the emperors of Shurima are the most valuable. The rest of the silver and copper coins are also very valuable and circulated throughout the continent. This is also a proof of Shurima's strength. Until now, Shurima's ancient coins and the remaining copper and silver coins are still the most popular coins among many tribes and countries. They are iron lumps that can be used to exchange things, and many people in our tribe also have a lot of them. Shurima is so powerful. On the other side, the man selling jars saw that many people who might have Shurima coins were hesitant, and he couldn't help but wink at his companions in the crowd. Receiving the signal, the jar holder pushed the person in front of him with an apologetic smile and came to the stall with a serious face. "Do you keep your word? Whatever I open is mine." The jar seller smiled. "Of course, everyone here is a witness, no matter who it is, they can't lie. Even if it's a treasure from ancient times, it has nothing to do with me." "Okay, I'll try." Touching his pocket, the jar holder counted out 10 copper coins and pointed to the jar on the ground. "I want that one." After collecting the copper coins, the jar seller handed the jar to the jar holder. Glancing at the curious crowd around, the pot holder held the pot in his hand with a solemn face, as if he wanted to throw it directly, but suddenly found something wrong and hesitated on the spot, arousing the curiosity of the onlookers. "If you throw it down, what if there are gems inside? Won't it be broken?" a spectator questioned. "I have a small hammer for opening the pot. It originally costs 1 copper coin, but since you are the first one, you can use it for free. Thank you." Putting the round pot on the ground, the pot holder took the hammer and solemnly hit it lightly. With a crisp sound of bang down, the pottery pot broke. After pushing aside the broken pottery pieces, the man picked up a fist-sized white bone with a disappointed look. "It seems that your luck is not very good. This should be a bone pot, not a gem pot for the Shurima royal family to be buried with, nor an equipment pot containing magic treasures," the pot seller explained, seeming a little helpless. The people who were watching attentively shook their heads in disappointment and were about to leave when they heard the man who bought the jar spit and said, "I'll give you the money. Damn, give me another one. If you can't open anything, I'll beat you to death. This big brother, whether you can open something or not is not up to me. Which jar do you want? Or should I choose it for you?" "The one next to it." "Okay, here comes the jar." Gritting his teeth, amid the ridicule of many onlookers, the jar holder decisively smashed the second jar. A crisp cracking sound was heard, and under the sunlight, a deep purple light shot out from the pile of pottery fragments. The sarcasm on the spectators' faces solidified instantly, and a woman screamed. The scene was silent for a while and a little weird. Trembling and pushing away the fragments of the pottery jar, the jar holder carefully picked up the round piece of finely polished purple crystal with an unbelievable look on his face. Is this true? There are really gems? I'm rich?" Although he looked unwilling, the man selling the jars still nodded and said with a forced smile, as if he had lost so much money that he was vomiting blood, "Oh, opening the jars is such a beautiful thing. Congratulations. This should be a relatively rare Shurima purple agate, which is a common burial object for the descendants of the Shurima royal family. You are really a person blessed by the goddess of luck. Maybe I should keep these jars and open them myself. Selling them for a copper coin is really a big loss." After getting the final confirmation from the jar seller, the eyes of the people present turned green, and their emotions completely exploded. Those who had coins started to push and shove to grab the jars on the spot, and those who had no money pushed through the crowd and quickly went home to borrow money. There are just over 100 jars, all treasures from ancient times, all top quality, first come first served. Give me one. I want to buy all the jars. Where are the gems? Where are my gems? Damn it, why aren't they gems? Give me another one. Don't forget to pay for opening the jar. Outside the bustling crowd. Grandma, don't we buy one? What if we happen to get a purple gem? The little boy holding the bone ball still looked innocent. Silly boy, that's the trick. If there were really treasures in the jar, he wouldn't let you open it. He would have smashed it and sold it for money. Those who can get good things are the ones they have arranged long ago. Tassia smiled and shook her head, took the little boy's hand, and walked away. My grandma taught me that when you feel that fate has blessed you, you must understand that this fate may have been arranged for you by others a long time ago. Be grateful or be vigilant. You can't always take the gift of fate for granted, otherwise you will suffer a great loss sooner or later. Now, I have told you this lifelong truth. You must remember it well. Okay, let's go. Grandma will take you to eat delicious food. Great. Today a book friend said that the rhythm of this book is messed up because there are too many original characters. The personalities are not well established. It seems there is no clue. The rhythm has no order of importance. He couldn't continue reading it and he wanted to give up the book. I felt cold in my heart and didn't know what to say. I want to know if this is what most people think or just some individuals. To be honest, I really don't have the ability to establish a character in just a few hundred words, nor do I know how to control the rhythm. Otherwise, I wouldn't be writing fanfiction now, and would have been writing original works a long time ago. I just want to use my own way to write a League of Legends universe fanfiction that people who don't play the League of Legends can also read, and write about the Runeterra in my mind. Because my level is not high, it's that simple. I'll start a harem, grow crops, fight wars, and describe the customs and stories of heroes in Runeterra. The original intention is to make some money for food and make everyone happy. I can also find something I like to do. Don't set too high requirements and expectations of me. I really can't write commercial texts, otherwise my first book wouldn't have flopped, and I wouldn't have to check the backstage every day for this book, preparing to get relief after it flopped. I'm just a newbie who writes crappy books and can't bear everyone's high expectations. For this, I can only say sorry. If you don't like it, can't read it, complain or criticize, I accept it all. If it really doesn't work, please delete the book. This thing really can't be changed. How can I change my 60 plus chapters and 140,000 words? Can I still write after the change? Reading a book is a matter of mutual consent, no different from finding a partner. If you don't like each other, just break up. I will correct my mistakes. If I can't change well, and you are not satisfied, we can part ways amicably. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.